This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakeland.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking.
And Mike Tunez in the third chair.
Pirates don't wear boots. I'm sorry.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming out at the speed of a sleek Corvette under full sail before a favorable wind coming on in a gale. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon, the men and women who help us keep the lights on, including John, Bill Alexander, Andrew Brown, Mark DeBlasi, and Fred Quiche. Fred. I'm Geekly McNarty, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, Jacob Wilkins, Wakeland, and sailing aficionado, game designer, and professional pirate, Mike Jacques Tavernier Tunez. Let's begin. Issue number 1. Pirates can be defined as men and women who engage in acts of robbery or criminal violence on the sea. Although looming large in the collective societal consciousness of the current era, especially if you're a gamer, pirates weren't, for the most part, very good people, and their lives, all in all, weren't very glamorous. And yet, piracy has been around for a long, long time. Question. The first historically documented examples of piracy include early attacks on Aegean and Mediterranean shipping in the 14th century BC. What was the name of the seafaring culture that conducted these heinous raids? Philip Ross.
Aqua Gypsies.
Sir Christopher Mings Mike.
The Sea People?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's what we have an expert on. I need to make questions without real answers. Bing! That's one. Thankfully, Russ is still wrong! That would be the Sea Peoples. Issue number 2. Let's see how you know your gladiator lore. A gladiator was an armed fighter who entertained audiences in the Roman Republic and Roman Empire in intense clashes with other gladiators, wild animals, and condemned criminals. Although the most common gladiatorial events pitted trained warriors against each other, mock hunts and other battles with exotic beasts were popular as well. Question. What was the largest animal ever to have been battled by an actual sitting emperor for the entertainment of the masses? Rudiba Russ.
Elephant.
Marcus Edelis Mike.
I'm also going to go with elephant.
And that would make you both wrong! A whale!
What?
It is reported that Emperor Claudius slaughtered a whale that had been trapped in the harbor for the entertainment of a crowd he had gathered specifically for that purpose.
Impressive.
Issue number 3. Pirates and gladiators in the same episode. What could be better? But seriously, which would be better? Although active in entirely different time periods in wildly displaced locations, these two iconic warriors are some of the most popular fighters in Western culture. The question of who would win, a pirate or a gladiator, had to be asked at some point. By who? Question. Using the data collected by the Spike TV show Deadliest Warrior, who would have won a battle between a pirate and a gladiator? Rudy Arias Ross.
I'm going with the pirate and his pistol.
Mumalo Mike.
Pirate with the blunderbuss?
Interesting. I'm going to give you each half credit, which means you're each half wrong. Although they never met face-to-face in the show, the gladiator was killed by the Apache warrior, meaning he never even made it to the ancient finals. The pirate killed the knight with his pistol, and although he was then eliminated from the modern finals for having obsolete weapons, technically in this matchup, he wins by dint of having won his original matchup. Don't worry, it's math. Issue number 4. One of the most exciting elements of gaming in the age of piracy is the concept of ship-to-ship combat, incorporating the individual pirates, sailors, and soldiers into an integrated battle with their enormous ships cannot help but capture the imaginations of generations of gamers who grew up under the influence of, among other things, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Such a battle in vibrant 28mm is sure to stir the blood and rattle the dice. Question. One of the largest naval battles against a pirate force in naval history was called the Battle of the Tonkin River, pitting the British Royal Navy and its Chinese allies against the massive fleet of a notorious pirate king who later became a decorated officer for the Qing Dynasty Navy. What was this pirate king's name? Sea Rover Russ.
Greenbeard.
Marauder Mike.
The only... I don't know, but I'm going to guess the husband of Mistress Chang, whose name I don't remember. That
is sadly wrong, and I really was hoping you'd get this, Mike, because I have no idea how to pronounce this. Shap Tsai. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G. Hello!
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to episode 190.
That should be something special. I don't know. what.
10 more and it's 200. Wait for that.
That's true. We'll wait for that.
Of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Mike Tunez.
Hey, Mike.
Tunez, pirate extraordinaire.
Yes, indeed. A man behind the game Blood and Plunder. Very excited. Very successful Kickstarter there, Mike. Really excited for you there.
Thanks.
So we're going to talk with Mike here about his gaming cred and how the origin story of himself and Blood and Plunder, and then all the awesome that is Blood and Plunder. And then, of course, later, you can't really talk pirates without talking gladiators. Is that a thing, Craig?
So they like joined at the hip. I
They
think.
really are.
Totally
not.
a thing.
Anyway, we thought since Mike knows his miniature gaming and we love miniature gaming and Arena Rex is the hotness that Craig and I are excited about since Adepticon, we thought we'd talk quite a bit about that a little later as well. But up first, Craig, we have a few things we want to talk about. Number one, we caught up with Mike first, of course, at Dunkin' Donuts whilst recording the Lost Chapters. Mike, do you remember what we talked about there?
We talked about some inspirational pirate literature and video games and Age of Sail stuff in general, did we not?
We did. Correct, sir.
That's good. I'm glad I remembered
We
something.
did. Well done. As well.
I'm going to break. This is a first on the D6 Generation.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to tell our listeners not to listen to that Lost Chapter.
Why not?
It will crush your childhood images of pirates.
Oh.
Mike is ruthless with his knowledge of piracy as it really was. I haven't slept a night since we recorded that Lost Chapter. It's reverse psychology, Russ.
Oh, okay, right. Yes, don't
It's
listen to
terrible.
it. If you don't want your childhood dreams, actually, it was one of our. I really enjoyed that episode. It was a good
lot
one.
of fun.
If you're looking for inspiration and things to read about Age of Sail, or just bone up on your pirate knowledge, there.
That's right. Basically, if you want to see Russ and I caught completely flat-footed, thinking we went in totally prepared with some really great inspiration, and then had them all rated
Yes.
by the local pirate
We
specialist.
did end up rating all the various sources of inspiration for historical piracy accuracy.
Yes,
right?
yes.
On the
Well,
official Mike.
I don't think
scale.
I don't think I got all of them. I mean, I think I left you guys a few, didn't I?
That's
No,
true.
you did.
Oh, no, in fact, you were very gentle with some of
You
the
were,
probably
yeah,
more
no,
wildly
you were.
implausible ones.
Some childhood heroes, such as Captain Hook, were left standing, but otherwise,
That's
Well, you didn't give me a chance on that one as well.
no, we didn't really
That's
destroy
true.
Peter Pan.
That's
You got to leave some icons.
John
in.
Malkovich did not escape unscathed.
Did not.
Put it that way.
Yes. So anyway, so listen to that. And Craig, if someone wants to listen to that, despite our recommendations to not destroy their fantasies,
That's right.
of pirates,
That's right.
What should they do?
Well, the best way to do it is to go over to our website at the d6generation.com and click on the link that says Patreon, or just go to patreon.com and search for the D6 Generation. Either of those paths will bring you to the same place, which would be our Patreon page, where you can watch a video of Russ and I firmly fixing in your mind why we do audio only medium. And then you'll figure out what Patreon is, and it's a way for us to keep the show running and for us to do all the cool stuff that we can do, that we can then come back onto the show and talk about, maintain our contacts, all that stuff that takes up time and effort, and we go all over the place. Just $2 a show on Patreon will unlock the entire library of the Lost Chapters. So that is what episode are we on now, Russ?
Geez, I don't know, like 120, something like that.
Really?
Yeah,
Jeez,
seems like that.
it's been
Yeah.
that long. So
I know.
that's whatever that is divided by half. That's how many more hours you've got to listen to the D6 Generation with our guests from all over the world, shattering childhood images and fantasies up and down the. I don't know.
Indeed.
Yes.
So before we shatter any more fantasies, Craig, what's it time now for?
It's time for Shatter It. No. Achievements in Gaming.
It is indeed. And of course, Achievements, as always, is brought to us by our friends over at Patreon. All those great supporters that help us keep the lights on. We hope you'll become one too. So what have you been playing lately? Mike, what have you been up to?
All right. Well, Lately, aside from playing plenty of Blood and Plunder,
There you go.
I've been playing also some BattleTech and some Kings of War.
Ooh, now later we're going to learn that BattleTech is one of Mike's original sort of, game-inducing games there, and you're still playing BattleTech regularly, right?
Yeah, I play more Alpha Strike than anything else these days, but I do get some regular old classic BattleTech.
Now, what do you like about Alpha Strike?
It's cool for just putting lots of stuff on the table, and it gives the infantry and the tanks and the fighters and all that stuff, kind of lets you get it all into the fight.
So it gives you a nice army scale, whereas the original BattleTech was more like lances, maybe 3, maybe 6 mechs if you want to go crazy. Yeah. You're talking now about like how many sort of units are on the table when you guys play?
Normally at least 12, but it's usually sometimes closer to 20. So
got it.
Plenty of units. It's definitely it's cool. I like it.
Great. Awesome.
What do you play on in Kings of War?
So I just got started with Kings of War just a couple weeks ago, really, and I've been using my models from Lord of the Rings.
Ooh, yes.
Cool.
And I've been playing Kingdoms of Men and the Brotherhood so far, but I'm leaning more towards Kingdoms of Men. So I bought a bunch of models for that, but we'll get into that in the next part because that's the only modeling I've really done.
Okay, well, I do. Well, I'm going to remind you about that because I want to understand if you permanently. So the Lord of the Ring models never ranked up, right? They were all.
Well, yeah, there was the War of the Ring game they did.
Oh, so are you playing with those guys, not the original sort of skirmishing ones?
Well, it's the same models. They just had little movement trays and stuff. So that's what me and a friend did to try the game. We just used those same movement trays.
Clever. So, that's actually really cool because if you wanted to collect those Lord of the Ring models and maybe you don't like those rules or you like the rules but you couldn't find anybody to play, now you can reuse those awesome. Those are fantastic models. Those GW Lord of the Ring find are awesome. Yeah, I like them too. Very cool.
You could do an orc army with those orcs.
Oh, yeah, orcs, wolf ride. I mean, you get the whole thing.
They got goblins and all that good stuff.
They really do have quite a selection. Treants, get your tree beard models. Oh, yeah, it's all good.
That's cool.
Craig, what have you been playing?
I have been playing a lot of Arena Rex.
Yes.
Had a bunch of people over. Talk about that in a little bit. But and Martian Dice, we're at that time of the school year again where standardized testing is wreaking havoc with schedules.
Uh-oh.
So I'm left with like 2 or 3 kids block. And so today I unfortunately forgot all of my little filler games at home, and the only one I had is Martian Dice, which I always have in my briefcase. So played a whole bunch of Martian Dice, and once again, across the board, doesn't matter what high school clique they fit into, they all love that game.
There you go.
So
nice.
That's been me lately. My time has been spent elsewhere, as I will speak of soon. What about you, Russ?
Well, I was able to go to the Granite Game Summit, or as they call it here, the G2S. The Granite Game Summit. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with New England state nicknames, it is the Granite Game Summit because we, of course, in New Hampshire here, are living in the Granite State. See what they did there, Craig? And this is the very first event of this, and it was actually right down the street from my house on Exit 4 in Nashua, in the little Holiday Inn there. Nashua's not a very particularly big city, so our hotels, we don't have anything like a convention hall. This is just, imagine a little roadside Holiday Inn that has a little bit of a conference room, a good-sized conference room where you could fit like probably 200 or so people, and what they had done was just set up all these tables end to end, and people just came in there. They had it. What was really nice about it was they had a massive game library. This was almost entirely board games. A massive game library. It was actually very impressive. I would say it rivaled. It was larger than what we have at Adepticon, Craig, and it was closer to what you might see at Origins or Gen Con in terms of the overall board game library. They had a really, really good selection.
It looked huge. Your pictures on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, because there were 2 whole walls just end to end with board games you could just grab and play with. They had all the little signs and stands, so you could put a little sign on your table saying, like, looking for players or looking for teachers or instructors. And what you could do is you could find the box you wanted to play, put it on your table, put the little sign on top, and people walking around go, ooh, Dark Moon, I want to play. Oh, you'll teach me? Cool, let's play. And you grab it. So it was a great way to just meet people and get some games in. Took my daughters over there, and we sat down, and we played, spent the better part of the day there, probably over 6 hours. We did play our own version. We played Dark Deeds with ourselves and a couple other folks, and that was a lot of fun. That's the one, again, that Craig and I talked about. That's from Andy Chambers. So then we went on to, we did Dark Deeds. Then we went on to Shadows of Brimstone.
I really want to play that game.
Yes, and our friend Pranav, who's in our local gaming group, was running it there, and he was running it for a bunch of folks, and he has pretty much everything they make for the game, much of it painted up. It looked fantastic, and this game, for those who don't know, it was a big Kickstarter. It's a dungeon crawling game set in the alternate history cowboy times. And essentially the characters you're playing, and it's pure co-op, so it's the players against the game, and that you're playing various cowboy characters, and you're going through this basically old mining thing,
Complex.
caverns. Yes, thank you. And as you go, you're fighting essentially variants on Cthulhu creatures and other stuff like that. A lot of fun, really cool, great looking. I mean, amazing models, amazing components. But what's really neat about it is
at Flying Frog Production.
yeah. But what's really neat is when you're done with the dungeon, the mining crawl, I guess, and you come back to the city. That's not automatically just trivial. There's actually different cities you could go to. And when you're there, you can resolve stuff, and all of a sudden a battle could break out right in the middle of the city, and all of a sudden you're having a showdown at high noon, all kinds of cool stuff. So really a lot of fun there. I could definitely see getting into that and playing that more. So we're very much eyeing that one. And that took my girls from not really being that interested in playing a game like this, as they describe it as Dungeons & Dragons without the story. They say, isn't this just D&D where you just do the dungeoning part and don't do any of the story part and no role-playing? I'm like, well, and we started role-playing and having a lot of fun. We played with the Flores and their kids, and it was a blast.
Nice.
Also got another game of Dark Moon in.
Oh, yeah.
Had a great time there, and the girls played it, and they fell in love with it. Now they want to play it with they had very similar feelings to you, though, Craig. They had a great time with it, but they said this game would be much more fun with people you know. So we played another 7-player games. They were learning. A bunch of other folks were there learning. I knew one of the people there because he was in a local gaming group. Hi, Ben. But it was a lot of learning. Ben and I had a blast, but you could tell the people who were less comfortable with being accusatory with people they don't know were feeling a little bit, awkward about it.
Yeah.
But definitely a great game and a fantastic game for people you don't know very well. And then also finally, people you do know well.
I was going to say.
Got that backwards.
I think you just totally reversed yourself.
I did. And then finally, I did play another game of Level 7 Omega Protocol, going one level deeper. I was very excited to get 3 Fear Hunters on the board at once. These are some of the biggest monsters that the Overseer can get on the table. Did lose this one, but I'm still feeling good because I already wiped them out once. So
that's right.
I'm just saving up my energy for the next wipeout.
Everything now is a wash.
It is, and what I'm doing now is you got to give them a little confidence, no, Craig. You don't want to smack them down twice in a row. You want to feel like they're doing good. Let them go through a level or two, and then wham, and get them. So
you tell whatever lets you sleep at night.
That's pretty much how it works. And then finally, as Craig mentioned, I get to play some Arena Rex at Craig's awesome arena, and more about that later. So that's what we've been playing lately. What about modeling, Mike? We know you're a miniature gaming guy. What have you been modeling lately?
So, like I said, got into Kings of War recently, and I was liking Kingdoms of Men, so I decided to go with I bought a bunch of historical models from Old Glory, and I've been building up my army. And I'm doing the multi-basing thing, because I think that's kind of cool. So I got the models glued right on the base.
Nice.
And I'm kind of doing a pike and shot sort of setup, so lots of arquebuses and pike blocks and stuff like that. I also picked up some old GW models. I got a what is it? It's like something from the Empire, some guy on a griffin. I don't know. It was a pretty cool model. Picked that up and started basing everything, and it's been fun. So far I've got a group of pike blocked done up completely, as well as a couple arquebusier troops, and what else? I got some guys with like big 2-handed swords, got them done.
Nice.
And did the basing, but the rest is still being built and painted, but I'm excited to get it all done.
Now, are you finding it liberating to be able to, one of the things that's kind of interesting about Kings of War, when we reviewed it not too long ago, that was really interesting, was that you don't, as blocks of units take wounds, you don't remove models from the block. So that allows the modeler to just build the block as they want it to appear and not have to worry about removing models onesie-twosie, so you can arrange, sort of like mini dioramas. Are you finding that enjoyable and fun and liberating?
Yeah, it actually makes it a lot more fun to model. In the pike block, in the center of it, I got like a big rock, and then I put the commander of the unit on top, kind of like pointing outwards.
Awesome.
So, that whole kind of cheesy bit that everybody always does. But it's fun. It's fun to do that and to find the parts and put it together and just make each base try to look unique. So it's I've been enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, I feel like it seems to me that it removes the chore of painting. You're doing a block of whatever, skeletons, zombies, goblins, whatever, and you're doing that block, and it's like, oh god, I got 20 goblins to paint, right? But when you're doing a diorama, suddenly it shifts, and all of a sudden you're making a scene. So yes, it's still maybe, and you can probably get away with a few less guys because you put a big rock in there. Maybe you only have 18 guys instead of 20 physically represented, but you're making that scene, so the whole thing kind of comes together. Is it more rewarding that way?
Definitely, and like you said, because you can put less guys, you could buy less models too and get more out of them.
Right.
So the Old Glory sells them in like packs of 30. So that I ended up making like almost 4 regiments out of that.
Nice.
It's kind of cool. So
I think Mantic's onto something with this Kings of War thing. I think he's got something going on there.
Yeah. And not too long ago, I also started. When I was starting to play a little more Alpha Strike, I pulled out some old models and started rebasing them. I had some terrible basing that I did before. And it was just bothering me, so did that and repainted a few new models. Got some little 6mm infantry for them and put those on bases and painted those up. That was the easiest painting I've ever done.
Nice.
It's just literally just putting little dots everywhere. It was cool.
Yeah, super small scale's fun. So you enjoying the BattleTech? How do you like the BattleTech model range and the quality?
Well, it's it's hit and miss. Some of the newer stuff is kind of nicer. I'm really excited for the stuff they're going to do now. I don't know if you've seen, they're bringing back a lot of the old, like the Marauders and the Warhammers.
Yeah, they redesigned them. Yeah, see, that's what I thought too. Last time I saw some of their stuff, that's what they were talking about. They had a couple early prototypes of the new stuff, and they were going to redo the whole range. And so, if they can get the same quality across the range, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, it looks like they're doing it. I've seen I saw some 3D prints they had at Gen Con last year, and it looks really nice. So I'm excited to see that stuff come out.
Very cool. Hopefully we'll have some of that this year at Gen Con. That'd be fun. I love BattleTech, so I just like the imagery and everything. So I'd collect that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mike, how many models of Blood and Plunder to date have you actually assembled and painted now? What's your count?
Well, there's not much assembly with the models. It's pretty much just removing little pieces of flash and stuff like that. So we put the models already on the base and everything, which is helps when you're prepping. It's just snipping off little thin bits. But so far, I have been able to personally do a grand total of about 12.
12.
But I did do one of the ships that you see in the in all the images and stuff. The one that's got the blue on the trim.
Yeah,
I did that ship. I rigged it and painted it.
Nice,
beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And there was another ship that actually hasn't been shown because we ended up not using it in our first set. It had a lot of little issues that we decided to rework it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna redo it later. It's a little too small for the main game, so it's a nice ship for playing smaller games.
Was it a canoe?
It is not. It is a. It's kind of a generic, a little small ship. We're calling it a bark. But it's. I painted one of those up, and I made the terrain board that we did in the videos.
Oh, nice!
So,
which is very nice.
It is very nice.
Yeah. Well, not the one in the picture with all the nice water effects and all that. I did the boring land one. That's just kind of like a road.
That's still cool.
Still nice. Yeah, all right.
It has a nice little crossroad right there for ambushes.
Yeah, we were waiting for a guy to build us a board for that to do those videos, and unfortunately he got injured and wasn't able to work on it. So I kind of just went to Home Depot, bought a bunch of stuff, and made a board like overnight. So that considering, I don't think it's that bad.
Right.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, that's about all the modeling I've done recently, though.
That's enough.
Greg, what about you, man? I know you've been doing a lot, dude.
I've had a busy couple weeks. Okay, so this is what I've done in the last 2 weeks. So first, I finished all the Marvel Miniatures game models by Night Games so far. So for Avengers, that would be Cap, Iron Man, Black Widow, Thor, and Black Panther. For Guardians of the Galaxy, that would be Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Nova, who is from the comics and not the movie, so I have no clue. And from the X-Men, Cyclops, Rogue, Wolverine, Colossus, and Deadpool. And because I like the movies and really don't have any connection to the comics, I actually, as much as I could, painted all of them up in movie costumes rather than the costumes from the comics. So that was neat, and they look pretty cool all painted up. And I haven't taken any pictures and tweeted anything out yet, but I plan to.
Cool.
Then there was Kings of War, which I have yet to play because real life sort of interrupted and dashed my game night to Hades last week. But I did do a lot of modeling to fix up a Tomb King's army that has not seen the light of day. It has been packed away since I used to work for Games Workshop as a trainee for that director's position. So that was a long time ago, like probably over 10 years ago. So that's going to be Empire of Dust now. And I had to like fix a bunch of models and put a little touch-ups paint here or there. And I did the same thing with my Warriors of Chaos army, which will be a Varangur. And they're both from the Uncharted Empires book, which Mantic geniusly put out to flesh out rules for armies they don't intend to release themselves, but maybe another major game company had these armies and then cut them loose from the universe for whatever reason. He did so.
A lot of local guys here actually that got out of said game is are kind of doing the same thing. They're bringing out a lot of old armies and rehashing them. There's a lot of a buzz going around this game right now locally.
It's very exciting. Right now I have all the Tomb Kings laid out on a board with some terrain that hasn't seen action in a long time, and they're all trade up now. Of course, I don't know why I did this, but all of my units were bizarrely numbered and had really weird footprints that I'm sure I thought had some sort of technical significance 10 years ago. So I had to do new trays and everything for them. So that was cool. And then I finished up with just last night, put the finishing touches on my Arena Rex models. I have the 13th Legion. So that would be Sulla, the old man, Aquila, the guy with the awesome hat.
Yes.
Banluka, the woman with the spear. Urian, the guy with the big giant axe.
Yes.
Gaius Palladus, or as we like to call him, Tree Man.
Or Groot.
And Amelia, the other spear woman.
Yes. I like Gaius and Amelia. They're both awesome.
Yeah, they're the models are really cool. We'll talk more about that when we do the review. And then in probably the craziest terrain project I have done in years, I went from a perfectly pristine Playmobil toy 4270 kit, the Roman Arena, to a completely painted and textured and adapted and adjusted and based with pits built into it. Big set piece for playing Arena Rex in.
I can attest it's beautiful, and we have pictures on the Twitter feed now.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some more
definitely check
pictures on my own Twitter feed as well.
And it definitely makes the game. We'll talk more about this later, but it definitely makes the game come alive. Having that arena,
really
you need to have
it.
that. You need to have.
So I've been very, very busy. What about you, Russ? You done anything?
No. I blame G2S because I went to that instead of doing modeling.
Yes.
I'm a
G2S.
sad. I have no excuse other than that. So
there you go. All right.
What about other stuff?
Well, then, Russ, salvage your reputation by doing a half decent other.
Yes. Well, let's start with Mike. So, in terms of books and movies and TV shows, Mike, what have you been watching lately?
Well, I haven't really had a chance to read a lot of books, sadly, aside from, research stuff like we talked about. So, like, Sea Rover's Practice. I read The Fortune's Whelp recently, which I think Greg picked up now, right? And but that's about it. I read those a while back, though. But ever since I got into the Kings of War thing, all my reading time is gone. Yeah. Now I'm modeling and stuff. So, but I have been watching Turn, the latest season.
Turn.
Oh yeah.
How are you liking that?
I'm liking it a lot. The first season was a little slow for me, but toward the end it really picked up, and then the second season was fantastic, and the third season has been even better. So it's a really fun show. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, I've also been I've watched the Black Sails. Just ended recently, so now I'm left hanging. Thankfully, Game of Thrones and Turn came around now to make up the lack for me. So, yeah, that's all. That's unfortunately all I've really been able to get done though on that front.
Well, that's good though. You got to keep busy.
Yeah, you got to keep it going.
You do.
That's right.
Keep the momentum going.
All right, Craig. What about
Russ.
you, man? Or you want me to go?
You, Russ.
All right, fine.
You take control of this show.
All right, fine. I will. So first of all, I'm still blasting through the Iron Druid books. In fact, my daughter, I think I've mentioned this, that pretty much everybody in the house now is reading these books. And my oldest daughter is ahead of me. She's just finishing up the latest one. I am just finished Trapped. So what happens, though, right around Trapped is there are several short stories that came out in various other publications that insert themselves right around the Trapped timeline. So either right before that book or right after that book. And they kind of reference them a little bit inside of Trapped. So I'm like, oh, man. So... but the way he does it, they're really standalone short stories. You don't need them, but it's just you don't want to, you get that completionist thing. So I found, unfortunately, they're all on Audible and available for like a couple bucks for this one, a couple bucks for that one. So I'm grabbing all those and listening to those. Cool. I also, though, I tried another new book while I was on Audible, trying to find all the various Iron Druid mini books, if you will. I found this new thing called Critical Miss. Have you seen this series of books? The premise of these is that...
Oh, wait, is this the humor, the funny...
Well, they're supposed to be funny.
That reset your spaceship?
No. This is kind of like Guardians of the Flame, if you remember these ancient books that you can't find
Those
anymore.
are ancient, yeah.
So the premise of this is a bunch of kids playing a fantasy role-playing game, non-IP infringing, I believe they call it Caverns and Creatures. Right?
Okay, well, there you go.
And whilst they are playing this game, and this is the very beginning of the book, they upset the DM, who they've never met before. They put an ad in the paper for a new DM. And this new DM comes in and is taking through it. And lo and behold, the DM has the power to actually send them into the fantasy world. And now they're there. They don't know how they got there. It's written as humor. It's got really good reviews on Audible. My problem with it is it's not my style of humor. It's very crass, which is not my thing normally.
No.
So I have mixed feelings about it. I'm finding it pretty funny. But like there's parts,
but in an embarrassing way.
I guess like I wouldn't want my daughter to listen to it. I'll just listen to part of it. It's like that kind of like really like toilet humor, that kind of stuff all the time. But not like it's even I guess like South Park, but in a different kind of way. I don't know.
Like the bad half of South Park.
Yes, South Park every once in a while goes really. You're like, oh, did you need to? I mean, I know it's kind of like got a little bit of that in there. It's funny because it goes from. It's kind of like South Park. It's like, oh, that's pretty good. I'll listen to. Oh, really? It's kind of like that. But there's some neat stuff in there. Like, well, I don't want to spoil it. Maybe check it out if you like that. If you like South Park all the time, 100% of the time, then check this out because it's like South Park meets Guardians of the Flame. I guess is the best way to describe it, if that's a thing. So if you don't know Guardians of the Flame, it's a really old set of books that are on the same premise that a bunch of college kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they end up in that world. But it's not humor; it's more serious and what would actually happen and how it goes, and they're trapped there and all this stuff.
And it's mainly about slavery.
It's mainly about slavery, but it's also about the moral decisions. Like when you're playing D&D, you're like killing people without thinking about it, and all of a sudden, now it's a thing, and so. But those are really like you can't even find those in e-print. Like you can't find them at all.
Really?
I was trying to find them the other day for my daughters.
I have them all, but I have them all in the pub.
I'm going to have to borrow them because I was trying to find those again and I could not find them.
Oh, they're great books, or they were. I don't know. I haven't read them in 2 decades.
Yeah.
Didn't they make a movie like that?
Maybe.
It sounds familiar.
They might have. But anyway, so I was trying that book anyway. So, but also in other news, and now for something completely different. Are you guys all caught up on Game of Thrones? I'm not going to spoil anything, but are you caught up?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hopefully, I feel bad for anybody who was spoiled because I think that scene was very powerful. If you had no clue it was coming, which I did not,
me neither,
and I thought it was awesome. But I could imagine if you had a hint of what it was, you would think it was lame. So I think, but I think going in not knowing what's coming was amazing, and I thought it was really cool. And apparently, if you watch HBO has a little thing after each episode where they talk about the making of that episode. Have you guys watched that?
Yeah.
And so apparently, like, that whole scene was in Martin's mind, if you believe the producers. Like, that was something he was driving.
Oh, they have it in the show notes from the very first meeting that they had with him before they even started the series.
Which I thought was cool, because it's a really powerful... I thought it was... Did you guys think it was... Not spoilers. Did you think it was a cool scene? Did you think it was cool what they did? Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. My wife freaked out, so that's always a good indicator that it was good.
Yeah, both Nicole and I were like, what the... Oh, my God. It was awesome. So I don't want to spoil it, but if somehow you've lived in a world where you haven't seen one of the gajillion tweets not so veiledly referencing this...
or the headlines.
Right. For God's sakes, watch the episode.
A friend of mine at school is not going to watch the series until the next book comes out.
Well, that's
and he's like a huge fan. And every week he is just like twitching, like as he tries to avoid any possible spoiler whatsoever. And he was driving home today from school, and he was listening to the radio, listening to music, no big deal. Some Sinead O'Connor song came on, and he was like, oh my God, I got to turn it. Turned it to a sports channel, and they were doing cultural trivia. And they were going, what character? Blah, 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 blah. And he just went, oh. He immediately texted with that character's name, and that's all it said. And I typed back, I don't know what you're talking about. If this is a trick, I refuse to fall for it. And he's like all bent out of shape now. Yeah, I know. It's almost impossible. I mean, it's so
really hard
saturated into the culture
and
now.
And the problem is, that's exactly right. Like all the lines referencing that now, like you can't, I don't even want to say anything, but there's like, that's going to become a one-liner, like use the Force, Luke, and trust your feelings and all that. And so you really...
And then some jerk retweeted a picture of the character.
Look, you wouldn't know anything about that.
Household.
You wouldn't know anything about that if you hadn't seen the scene. There's no spoilers there. It just looks like a nice branded product you could buy. You know, it's not anything.
And then when you see it, you know which character to look for. And
well, no, now you're spoiling it. You're making that related.
It. You spoiled it.
All right, fine. Anyway, go freaking watch Game of Thrones if you somehow not had it spoiled
yet. Follow any of Russ's tweets and see.
But here's the thing. Okay, so now on a slightly different vein about this, though. Mm-hmm. So, isn't it weird now that we're past the books? Like, is this going to make you not want to read the books anymore?
Well, you don't think the books are going to get written.
Well, okay. Two theories. One, he's not going to finish the books. Why does he care? He's making money over hand over the fist. He's just going to go.
And I argue that he needs some sort of legacy.
He doesn't care.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Because I think if he cared, he wouldn't have let the show get ahead of his books. How could any creative person let that happen? I mean, have someone else writing your story for you or perceived to be writing your story for you. I can't. True. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
That is odd, yes.
So I don't think he's going to finish the books. But let's say he does. Let's say he wakes up and he does and he finishes the books. Are you compelled to read them now, Craig? Or are you
absolutely, because he has more detail than they do in the TV show.
But the detail is usually about food.
While I was seeing all the different scenes in this episode, I wanted to know what characters were thinking. I wanted to know like what was motivated, and you know that from reading because it's written in a way that will show you what they're like, why they're doing what they're doing. So yeah, I would absolutely read the book when it comes out. When it comes out, because I have faith.
Mike, would you feel the same? Have you read the books and watched the shows?
I haven't read the books yet, although I'm definitely probably going to pick them up on an audiobook.
All right, they're good. I think they're good on audio.
Sure. Make sure you get the Roy Dotrice ones. Yes, they're really cool.
Yes, I remembered your recommendation on that in a previous episode. I noted that, so it's saved.
Yeah,
but I think it's kind of the same effect of you kind of watch a movie that was first a book that you weren't really interested in the book, but then you saw the movie, you know. You're kind of like, maybe I'll read the book. That was kind of interesting. I want to see the book perspective. So I kind of think it's the same thing, you know. So I could definitely see myself reading on further to see how that goes in book form. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I think the show still got it though. That scene brought me. I know some people were concerned about the season. I thought that was great. Also, in speaking of television, have you guys been watching Gotham?
No.
Okay, so
I have not.
The latest episode of Gotham has been getting fantastic. The Penguin has become, I know I've been saying this forever now, but the last scene with the Penguin was so good. And the Doctor Strange there at Arkham Asylum doing all this craziness, it's just been getting great. And they've just been doing all kinds of...
Doctor Strange Marvel?
Well, Marvel does not have a patent on the word strange, apparently. Because there is a Doctor Strange, or might be Professor.
I don't know.
He's a psychologist. He calls himself a doctor. It is the same name because Nicole asked me this too. No, well, he's a doctor of psychology in a psychiatric prison, and his last name is Strange, and they often say Doctor Strange to him. So you can do the math.
I mean, I don't know. I thought I remembered something.
Doctor Strange also is the Marvel wizard superhero. It's not to be confused with Doctor Strange, the evil psychotic supervillain creator at Arkham Asylum. I guess.
Okay.
In any case, I'm really enjoying Gotham, and so watch that show. It's awesome, and the acting is fantastic. And finally, I got to play more Civilization with my girls. They're really into strategy games, and so we've been getting into Civ. And Civ 5 does some really cool stuff with multiplayer that I thought was pretty clever. So, it's a turn-based game. So imagine a board game, but what they do about this is neat is imagine a board game where you could all take your turns at the same time. Sort of simultaneous turn taking. So if Craig takes 5 minutes and I take 6 minutes, Craig's only waiting one additional minute to take his next turn, right? Because he only had to wait the difference. But then what it does is the problem with simultaneous turns is if you're at war, that works great if you're all doing peaceful stuff like building your cities and building trade routes and everything. But if you're at war, simultaneous turns can become a problem because now, if I've moved a unit and you've moved a unit, but you didn't know where my unit was going, my unit should have had visibility on your unit. What happens? So normally in single-player mode, it's not simultaneous. It's you go, I go. So what they do, which is interesting, is when war kicks in, the people at war, their turns become sequential. So which I thought was a pretty clever way to handle this problem. So they become sequential, so the game slows down a bit. But once someone declares peace, the game speeds up, which is an interesting meta on the game because all the other players are like, would you guys just make peace? It's like it speeds the game up again, which is kind of funny.
That's kind of interesting.
But it was kind of a neat mechanic. I was impressed by that. So I'm really enjoying Civ 5 as well.
Cool.
So, that's all my stuff. Craig, what about you, sir?
Well, let's see. I'm listening to Mistborn, which is another fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson. and it's not as difficult to immerse yourself in as I think it's the Radiance series, which is the other big giant epic fantasy series he's writing also at the same time. But it did take me a few hours to really get into it, but now I'm into it. I understand the way Magic's working. It's really cool, and I'm really involved, and I really enjoy it, and I'm in 100%. I'm reading Fortune's Whelp by Bennerson Little. It was recommended to me by a certain pirate aficionado. I'm really enjoying that too. It's actually got like the Blood and Plunder, as we'll discuss later in the show, is set in a specific time period that is not generally the time period that most fantastical pirate stories are set. And Fortune's Whelp, I believe, is set more in the time period that Blood and Plunder is set. And it's really kind of cool, and it makes that whole time period more accessible. And it's reminding me of all the other little bits and pieces of history that I knew about, but didn't really connect with the piracy and the pirates and that whole kind of element. And Bennerson Little is a ridiculously well-versed fencing expert, clearly. Because even applying all of my admittedly dated knowledge about fencing from being the captain of a military school fencing team, he's got stuff going on there. I'm like, okay, that guy wins. All right. It's really, really cool. So I'm really enjoying that. Game of Thrones, we already discussed. I'm still cranking through Daredevil Season 2.
How good is that, man?
I'm loving it. God. I just got to the big giant pit in the middle of a building. Nice. I love the fact that the episode ends with, okay, tell me when the flashlight ends. I mean, tell me when the flashlight hits bottom. And then it just ends because it never hits bottom. It's a hole that goes all the way through the earth. Well, probably
Have you had the chain to the chimney scene yet with Punisher?
The chain to the chimney scene is relatively early in the season.
Yes, was that an awesome scene? I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, everything with the Punisher. Of course, Shane from The Walking Dead.
Yes.
And he's amazing. His character is really engaging. You feel for him. You don't know exactly. I don't know. The Punisher, to be honest, is one of two comics that I ever collected even briefly, and I think I collected it for about like 3 or 4 months and then stopped when I was in high school. So I don't know his origin story or anything, but they did a great job in that show, and the fight choreography just continues to be insane.
It really is.
And let's see, I went and saw Captain America: Civil War for the 3rd time.
Nice. Is it still standing up after
this time? Well, this is the thing. The first time I ran to see it after working out. So I missed all the previews and jumped into my seat as the opening scene was just fading up from black. So I saw the whole movie, but I missed the whole relaxing opening moments. Mm-hmm. The second time I saw it, I knew for a fact I was going to have to leave before the movie was over. And I went and saw it anyway because I knew I wasn't going to be able to see it. My schedule is so messed up for weeks. So I went and saw it knowing I was going to have to leave before the end, which was a little more wrenching than I anticipated. So this time around, I was like, you know what? My good friend Russ is going to go see a baseball game during our Tuesday gaming night.
Yeah, it's awkward.
And everything else is fracturing and everybody's going off in different directions. And you know what? I'm not going to try to run around trying to make things happen. I'm just going to take it easy and go to the movies. And Dave then decided to do the same thing and met me there. So nice and relaxing, caught the previews. I haven't seen any previews for any of these movies yet. So it was exciting. I saw the first Rogue One preview on the big screen. Yep. I saw the first Doctor Strange, speaking of the devil.
Yeah, there you go.
On the big screen. So I was really excited to see all that stuff. So I enjoyed it. And that movie, again, is ridiculous. I still just gasp and chuckle through almost all the fight scenes. They're just so amazingly well crafted.
They really are. It's awesome.
Yeah. And then a little self-aggrandizement. My 6th novel, the first novel of mine that is completely my own, is now available electronically and will be available from the publisher as a hard copy. Legacy of Shadow is a science fiction novel. I'm really excited. The reviews are starting to come in, and they're good. Or at least I'm not reading any of the bad ones. I don't know. Could just be selective. I don't know. but I'm very excited to come out. A couple of the reviews that have come out so far have spoken to things about the book that I had in my mind that I really wanted to do with the book, but didn't know if I'd succeeded until I'm reading the reactions, and I'm really super excited about that. So
Awesome.
Really interested if you could check that out, that'd be awesome. If you read it and you liked it, leave a review somewhere or tweet it to me. If you read it and didn't like it, remember that the title was... No, never mind. Just gonna make a joke. But anyway, be honest. I'm not saying don't be honest. But, honestly, I am going to avoid it if it's a bad review. But anyway, so that's it. That's it for me. Is that it for everybody else?
I think
Is
so.
that achievements?
I think that's achievements.
That is achievements.
In a world where board gaming was king, in a time when Kickstarter ruled the web, when every day brought more and more games, now, more than ever, two men, and a revolving third chair, and a girl, a total fangirl, brought a shining light into the darkness so that all mankind would know what to buy. They are the D6 generation.
Hey, you know what that sound means? It's time to talk about our friends at LoneWolfDevelopment.com over there, wolflair.com, I should say.
Wolflair.com, which is the website for Lone Wolf Development.
It is, and they have some amazing software there. As Craig and I have talked about many, many times, all that great software that gets the job done. If you are a fan of Shadowrun, look no further than Hero Lab. It is the best way to create your characters in all your favorite RPGs, but they have specializations in particular areas. For example, Shadowrun, Pathfinder, D&D 5th edition now, the new SRD stuff that came out. You name it, they got it. Quick and easy to make your characters. Build them in Hero Lab, use them and edit them and run them in your campaigns on your iPad, so you can just sit there at the table with the DM and be like tracking your character and relaxing and not feeling like your face is obscured by the laptop, so you can see the fear in the DM's eyes as you draw your +5 Holy Avenger.
The Holy Avenger.
Oh, you got to have one of those.
You got to have at least
but
one.
let's say you're the DM and you're like, oh, yeah, well, I got the plans for you. Meanwhile, you've got Realmworks up there behind your DM screens, and it's tracking all the events that have happened. So you don't have those problems that other DMs have where you can't remember the name of that tavern the guys were in 6 months ago. It's all right there at your fingertips, and you can easily remember that where they found that +5 Holy Avenger and the fact that they didn't know it, but was actually cursed by the water hag. And now when he draws at this exact moment near a lake, it flies from his hands, lands in the lake, and now he's unarmed against a giant fire-breathing orc.
Ooh, that's a good one.
You like that?
The genius of Lone Wolf really is they take all of the parts of gaming, no matter whether you're talking about role-playing game, miniature game, collectibles. They take the parts that are usually onerous and nobody really wants to do it, and they make those parts fun also. They enhance your gaming, your hobby, in almost every way. It's really amazing, whether you're talking Realmworks or Hero Lab, like Russ just talked about. Of course, the classic Army Builder. They take these parts of gaming that are usually kind of a burden and I want to get through this so I can get to gaming, and they make those parts fun too. That's really the genius of Lone Wolf Development.
It is. So head on over to wolflair.com and check out all the hotness and try the demos out for free. And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present... Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep. Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap. Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey, and welcome to another App of the Ep. So this time around, I wanted to talk about the other big AAA title that just dropped, of course, and that is Overwatch. Last time I spoke about... oh, by the way, I know some folks have been asking me about the new Descent app, which just came out from Fantasy Flight Games. I've not had enough time to fully evaluate it yet, but I'm taking a look at it. I'm very excited about this. This is the new app that lets you go ahead and on your iPhone or your iPad, it functions essentially as the Overlord, as well as it turns Descent into a co-op game, Descent 2. So more about that in the future. But this time around, I wanted to talk about Overwatch, the other big AAA title, a brand new shooter game from Blizzard, the folks that bring you World of Warcraft and Orcs vs. Humans and StarCraft and all that stuff. Now, I spoke about Battleborn last episode, and Battleborn and Overwatch are interesting because they're both very similar concepts, which is take an eclectic group of characters, all kinds of wackiness from, in Battleborn, it's like a penguin driving a giant mech right next to a bow wielding female who looks like she could be right out of War Machine or Hordes, right next to, a dual sword wielding dude. All kinds of craziness, very eclectic characters. Both games have very eclectic characters. And as I mentioned before, last time, Battleborn, from the folks who made Borderlands, has that Borderlands sort of a cel-shaded look, very cool, stylized look. And, of course, Overwatch it's also cartoony, but it's more a traditional CGI cartoony, so hyper-realistic CGI, but definitely a cartoon feel. Also a lot of eclectic characters pulling from all sorts of places, such as anime and ninjas and robots and everything else. Really, both of them are really interesting ideas. And where they're different is Battleborn has more story and also has a cooperative mode that is really impressive. As I mentioned last time, you can put up to 4 or 5 players cooperatively and go through a series of sort of story events that, and also what's really cool about the game is as you play each battle, whether it's PvP, player versus player, or the story, your characters kind of level up as they go. And then they reset to 0 and level up again. And as you level up, you have this little tree of different ability buffs you can choose as you go along, and your character sort of evolve each time you play the game. Even in a single multiplayer match, your character levels up through this. And as you play the game more and more over time, you unlock new ability choices in that tree. So essentially, every time you play, you're all level 0, but if you played the game more often, you might have different ability choices as someone who's played it less. So really neat ideas there. And I also like in Battleborn this idea that there's these lore things you can unlock. So there's more of a story, and each character, because they're so different and unique, there's this really cool story behind each character that you can unlock. The more you do, the more you learn about them and learn about their story, which is really neat. Overwatch is different in that there is virtually no explicit story. The only story you get is from the trailer videos and the brief video that plays when you first launch the game. And then, of course, there were several teaser videos that were actually really, really cool CGI shorts, is the best way you can describe them, that do introduce you to the characters a little bit. Otherwise, no story. There is no co-op mode, except for a very light co-op mode where it's the same as PvP, except one team is AI. So it's very much a player versus player game, a la a Team Fortress or, Battlefield or things like that. In fact, it feels quite a bit Team Fortressy because of the cartoony style and also because of the very eclectic characters. You have turret builders and things like that. I will say this, though. Going into it, I thought I was going to like Battleborn more because of the story elements and the co-op elements. However, after playing, just somehow Blizzard pulled off a very smooth gameplay feel that is really impressive, and to the point where over time you'll find that Overwatch is a lot more playable in multiplayer than Battleborn is at all. Battleborn does have this really cool story mode, which I think is pretty neat, but once you get through it, you're done. The replayability in Overwatch is much, much more interesting, and it was funny, we had a little LAN party, my 2 girls and I, and played Overwatch pretty much all day Memorial Day and had an absolute blast. And could not put it down. Even just playing multiplayer match. The characters are so unique. They play so differently. The level designs are brilliant. The different problems you have to solve based on who you're fighting and how they're playing together are brilliant. The support roles, the tank classes, the builder classes, all of it really, really well thought out. Very, very polished. The only thing I wish they'd taken a couple of ideas from Battleborn and injected them in the game. The characters are so interesting. You want to know more about them, and I really wish they had some of that lore unlocks that come through the game. Instead, there are all kinds of cool skins you can get. There are all kinds of cool little user appearance things and one-liners and things you can get for your characters, but they all come in the form of loot boxes, and they're totally random drops. Battleborn sort of did it a little differently. The more you played specific characters, the more you unlocked for that character. So you could get really, really cool skins for a specific character. If you saw someone dressed as Thorn in a particular color out for a different skin, you knew that player really loved Thorn and played her a lot. Whereas in Battleborn, it's just I'm sorry, that's Battleborn. Whereas with Overwatch, if someone's got a really cool skin, it's because they just got lucky and got a lucky loot drop. Still, though, it is amazing. I can't. Overwatch is probably the most polished multiplayer game I've played in a long time. Pure arena combat game. Really, really good stuff. I highly recommend it. Both of them are fun. Neither of them you will be disappointed in. The real reason, though, that I don't think the thing my girls and I found about Battleborn we didn't like. Again, we loved the co-op. Really did like the co-op, but the multiplayer, the match balancing was not good. So you and your friends might be in there taking up half a team, and then you go up against another team, and they've got all players who are like level 50, and you're all level 10. And it didn't seem to do a good job of that. And we found like pretty much if we played 10 multiplayer matches, we would win one. With Overwatch, it does a much better job of match balancing. And what we're finding too is that we are winning half the games we play. Almost exactly. It keeps good stats, and we can tell that. So what we're really finding is that Overwatch does a better job at balance. We have a lot more fun, a lot more replayability. So really, really enjoying it. Check it out today. That's Overwatch from our friends at Blizzard. Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep. A segment in which, hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show. Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Welcome back. So you guys, as you know, we've got Mike Tunez on the show, and he's just finished up that big Kickstarter, the Pirate Kickstarter. And so Russ and I got super excited about that Kickstarter like right after it launched. In fact, it was the only thing, don't tell my wife, that I was paying attention to online while I was in Peru. So every time I had Wi-Fi, I was like, how's the Kickstarter doing? So congratulations first and foremost, Mike, on that Kickstarter, because big success.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was a major
cool
number there. What was your final number there on that, Mike?
Just over 215,000.
Nice. And what was your goal?
Our goal is 15,000. So 200 grand over our goal.
Nice.
So
kept
awesome.
it modest, and then it launched into the stratosphere.
It did.
Yeah. It sure did.
So Russ loves to give these little segments titles, as we all know, and usually he tends to go towards the alliterative.
Mm-hmm, right.
And sadly, he had some. I don't know if he ate too much beef tonight. I don't know if it was a margarita.
Hard to say.
But all we've got to work with now is the Booty on Blood and Plunder, which is kind of weak sauce, I have to say, although infinitely better than getting to the bottom of the booty on Blood and Plunder, which was his original thought, which of course is just ridiculously questionable, and we might even lose our family-friendly label for this episode for even mentioning it.
Exactly.
But anyway, so I am super excited to get to the back. I mean, one of the great things, Mike, that I think your Kickstarter did right off the bat was had a bunch of gameplay videos that came out on a regular basis throughout the Kickstarter. So I want to kind of dig right in because we've got a lot more to go on here than we normally do right after. I mean, the Kickstarter literally ended. I believe my account got slammed just about 12 hours ago. So very, very recently. So, but first, as you know, as a listener, which is another exciting thing for us guys, is that Mike is a listener. You know that there's a certain...
Ooh, there's a ghost, Mike.
Are you living in a haunted house?
There's a ghost in there.
Could be a pirate ghost.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, so we're going to just jump into this origin story. All right. Are you now or have you ever been, Mike, a gamer?
I have to admit that, yes, I am now and have been in the past a gamer.
You have been known to be a gamer. What is your origin story? What got you into this motley crew?
So what got me first into gaming is my aunt bought me a board game called Hero Quest when I was a bit younger for a Christmas gift, and I thought it was super cool. And oddly enough, me and my brother kind of got our little our Lego toys and stuff like that, and used that to kind of make our own little game, kind of in the same vein, using Lego Pirates. Oddly enough, so I've been. I didn't realize this is something I've been doing for a long time. I kind of remembered this the other day when my brother mentioned it. So that was my original thing, and then from there I got into BattleTech.
Ooh,
and
nice.
through the Mech Warrior games.
Yep.
Learned about it, saw the BattleTech game in a hobby shop, picked that up, and played that for a lot of years. And then a few years ago, when I first got married and didn't have a lot of money, and I needed to do fun things that didn't cost a whole lot of money, I started playing a lot of BattleTech again. And from there, kind of just started getting to a bunch of other games. From there, I discovered historical games, and I just found this wide world of gaming, and it's all of us it's downhill from there, as you all
Now,
And
so
experienced, I'm sure.
So did Hero Quest?
It's a craid black hole.
Yes, indeed.
Did Hero Quest start your passion for the miniature side of the hobby, and you'd always kind of stay there, or did you ever get back into miniature gaming after you kind of did the BattleTech thing for a while?
Yeah, it was the Hero Quest thing didn't really last too long, honestly. I just thought it was really cool. I never had played a game of that nature, so from there, and the BattleTech thing kind of replaced it almost right away. So me and my brother really got into BattleTech, and started collecting the minis and stuff for that and painting those up. And we stopped. We didn't use the hex boards. We did use the hex boards like once and never used them again. Started building terrain and stuff.
Oh, I see. There
and playing it that way, yeah. So
right from the beginning, you were into the visual appeal. That's what I was trying to get to. Because
yes, absolutely.
Blood and Plunder seems definitely to come from someone who's got a very big interest in how the game looks as well as how it plays.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Now-
definitely.
Now, Mike, how what's the age difference with your brother? It sounds like you had a built-in game partner from the get-go.
Yes, we're only 2 years apart, and he's been helping us through the process quite a bit. He's actually a historian. I'm actually kind of still technically studying in high school, in college. But yeah, he's been helping us a lot with historical research and stuff, and even with game rules, because he's pretty brilliant with that stuff. He's helped me significantly. So
Awesome. It's a family affair.
cool. Exactly, yeah.
So what kind of got you to trigger from going from a game player to game designer? Did you always kind of mess around with game ideas, or was this sort of thing you woke up one day?
He said he went straight from Hero Quest into doing his own games with Legos.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Amazing.
Yeah, but that's oddly enough that lasted like maybe a few months, and then we kind of got into BattleTech, and that erased all that. And then I got into high school and middle school and started kind of just didn't play a whole lot of games for a while. Kind of forgot about games altogether. So didn't really start. This is my first attempt at designing a game, actually.
Okay, cool.
But I got the idea when I discovered. I've always been a big fan of piracy, especially the actual history behind it, which is so often overlooked, and it's to me way more interesting than any of the fantasy stuff. Although that stuff is cool too, it's just cool to me. So the what was I talking about again? Yeah,
you were talking about what got you into designing
game
the game
design.
Yeah,
That's right. So I used to play a game Warhammer Historicals put out called Legends of the High Seas.
Yes,
and it was a pretty fun, simple little game. Didn't really like the sailing rules that much. Sailing is one of the things I do as a hobby, also outside of gaming.
Nice.
But the game was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. Then when Warhammer Historicals went under, I was like, I have nothing now. So I just said, I think I could put something together. And I'm pretty passionate about. There's another game out there that really covers what I want. So I just started doing it kind of as a hobby, and put it together and shared it with another local gamer down here, by the name of Alex Aguila, who happens to be the one of the founders of Alienware Computers.
Oh, wow.
So he was excited about the game, said it had a lot of potential. We kind of partnered together, and then here we are with Firelock Games and Blood and Plunder.
And the rest is history.
Basically, yes.
There you go. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you're passionate about sailing as a hobby, but then also the history of pirates as a hobby, and so you kind of felt there wasn't really a really good sort of miniature pirate game that really captured both good sailing mechanics as well as boarding actions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, then there's some cool minis games out there right now that use sailing ships and such, but none that really play in the skirmish level where you have like your crew on your ship, kind of like Legends of the High Seas did, if you're familiar with it.
Yes.
So I thought that was great, and there wasn't any other game out there that I saw that really did that, and I just thought that was the funnest way to approach it. You really felt like you were the captain of the ship, and your crew's having to manage everything and sailing the ship at the same time. So that's what we were going for to capture in the game.
Oh, nice. That's cool. Very cool.
So that's a good segue.
That is a good segue.
It's like a professional level segue, but we missed it.
We did.
It just sailed right past us into the okay. It's going to be a throw in. You take it, Russ. Throw in.
So that goes from. So how did you decide? You started playing it with your friends down there and getting into it, and you liked it. You decided you wanted to make this thing for real and make it into Kickstarter. Was that sort of an immediate? Did you ever shop it around? Or you're like, I'm going to try the Kickstarter thing myself, or what kind of?
No, yeah, we kind of just decided to do it. We're just going to put it right out there. We figured we put our own money in to get started, and took a chance on that and got as far as we could. And then we said, let's just, try to see what we did the Kickstarter to see exactly how far to take it. Really, we wanted to gauge interest because you mentioned to people historical pirates, and they're like, yeah, but what about the zombies and stuff?
Right.
So we got a lot of that reaction. So we're like, man, what if this is like a thing that nobody's really interested in? Like, we're going to do it anyway, but let's just see exactly how much people are interested in this. So that's the reason we chose the Kickstarter route. So basically, that money was going to be to make all the molds and do all this stuff. We had some molds made, but they weren't finalized. So we had we wanted to make sure the final molds were perfect and exactly what we wanted. And so that's what we kind of did with the Kickstarter, and here we are. So I guess it was more popular than we anticipated, which is a great thing.
Now, how did you? What sort of connections made it possible for you to do things like mold? That's a step that most people never get to, and it seems like you got there before you even started the Kickstarter. So obviously, you've got a lot. There's a lot of thought and planning and preparation went into this. Right.
Well, thankfully we were able to kind of connect with a lot of talented people that were all around us, and we didn't realize it until the time came. But my partner Alex ended up knowing people who did 3D sculpting and a bunch of other stuff, and they were all local guys around here. Everybody's for the most part local, and we just kind of had them helping us out, and they're doing stuff for us for free, basically, and like all the sculpting and all that.
So great. So that takes care of the sculpting, which is awesome. That must have been really hard. And you found good sculptors? You figured out a way to make that stuff so you weren't really worried, even going into the Kickstarter, that you would have any problems sort of getting good sculpts and fulfilling that kind of stuff?
Yeah, not at all. That was definitely the least of our worries. Thankfully, we found great talent and who's super helpful, awesome. and they're and obviously you guys have seen the sculpts. I don't know anything about this kind of thing, but these guys did a great job.
I think they look awesome.
They've never done this kind of thing before.
I think they look fantastic. Not only are they really cool looking, period and cool looking costumes, but the poses, which is oftentimes, the thing that makes the sculpts look very, first time model company. The poses are very static or not dynamic. The poses look great. I think the miniatures all look really fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we actually had to tone them down significantly because one of our challenges learning everything while we were going through the molding process was realizing how 2-part molds work.
Right.
So we definitely wanted to keep at least the core troops, all the minis, as a single piece cast, including the base. So that was very difficult to get an interesting pose with that, and also make a workable mold that isn't going to fail every time.
So tell me about the ships, because this is a little unusual. Like a lot of Kickstarters, when they start, especially miniature games, they get all the miniatures down, right? But they don't often start off the bat with any kind of vehicle or large scale stuff like this. And you, right from the get go, you wanted ships that were big enough to do full size boarding actions with 28mm scale figures, right?
Correct. Yeah. Well, what's a game that has pirates without ships, really?
Exactly.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. So it's part of the core of the game, where basically think about any type of war game at this scale. And, it's basically we're treating our ships as vehicles. The catch with our vehicles is that you have to have water to move them around.
Right.
So that's basically how we treat them. So they're part of the core mechanics of the game. So it would feel odd to not have them included from the beginning. Right. So we definitely decided we actually made ships way before we made models. And we're not actually using any of those ships because they're terrible.
Well, I wanted to ask you, right from the beginning, you knew you wanted ships in this thing, and they had to work and be a core mechanic and physically hold lots of models in them so you could have boarding actions and stuff. And
right.
So how did you solve? Did you start first with mock-ups and made sure you could sort of make it workable? And then how did you prove to yourself, we're going to be able to make these models, cool looking, but also reasonably affordable?
Right. So that was, as far as making them affordable, we just basically, we made a 2-part mold for the ships, and the hull itself is all one piece. And, we just basically the inside of it is all completely hollowed out so that it's not one giant chunk of resin.
Right.
We bought a bunch of ships from other companies that are making 28 millimeter ships, and a lot of them don't hollow out that much, and some of them not at all. So it makes them very pricey, very heavy, very difficult to ship. And we also got a much lighter resin material. Our resin is almost like a plastic resin. It's kind of similar to what Privateer Press uses on their models.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's not exactly that material, but similar to that. So that makes it pretty affordable for us to be able to sell them at the prices we wanted to. Affordability is something we definitely wanted to do.
Well, they look affordable. They look affordable to me because I'm looking here at like the sloop is $35. This is the Kickstarter pricing now, of course.
Right, that's Kickstarter pricing.
So these are even more affordable because Kickstarter. But the Brigantine is like $55. Even that, like when you think about compare that to vehicles and other sci-fi games and everything else, that's really affordable. And how many guys can fit on could you actually put on the deck of the sloop? Like how many guys will fit on there?
On the sloop, off the top of my head, I want to say just under 40.
Yeah, 40, 28 millimeter models.
I could be wrong on that. It's rare to actually get that many guys on it. Just with by the time you've paid for all your guns and crew and stuff, it's
right.
You definitely get less than that. They're normally around 30 something, but they fit just fine with plenty of space. So
that's awesome.
Definitely somewhere near 40.
So this is a game you're going to be moving giant sort of resin boats chock full of miniatures around on the table. Firing cannons, doing damage, and then of course. With any luck, having a nice big boarding action at some point, right?
Right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely. That's the gist of it.
And what is a typical
when you're playing on sea? That is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, what is a typical game size? Are you thinking? Is it one ship versus one ship? Is it like a crew of 8 versus a crew of 8? I mean, what sort of was your goal here as the sweet spot for this?
So the models are organized into units. So the model count generally goes between 25 to 50 models a side, depending on how elite your army is or how inexperienced your army is. Or your force, excuse me. These aren't armies. They're far too small to be armies, but yes. So that's about the average count. Generally, you're going to have 1 or 2 ships aside. You could theoretically take a giant armada of longboats out there to go attack a larger ship. And although it's more difficult to pull off, and it's interesting to play it that way, but yeah, you could do anything of that nature. But you can also obviously play. It scales up pretty well. You can do 4 or 5 ships on a side in a larger game, and it manages okay. It's an evenings game, but So at that point, you're probably looking at around 100 models, 100 or so models a side.
Wow. But how long is a typical game? Like, what was your target game, in terms of thinking about rules complexity and game speed? What were you thinking for gameplay length when you had like maybe 1 ship versus 1 ship, or maybe 2 ships versus 2 on 2?
Yeah, definitely less than 2 hours, and we've stuck to that pretty good. Average game, once we're pretty experienced with it, obviously. For us, average game goes for about an hour, give or take 20 minutes, depending on the point size and the scenario and stuff like that. But yeah, we've tried to make sure it's not going to take up your entire day to get a game in. So.
Cool. And now I'm kind of implying here as I ask you these questions that it's always ship versus ship in the open sea, but you've got on the Kickstarter, there's definitely what looks like ideas for scenarios where it doesn't have to always be ship versus ship, right? What were some of the missions or scenarios you were thinking about as you built the rule set and the models?
Missions or scenarios specifically?
Well, yeah, like what kind of were you thinking about the idea of all land battles, all sea battles, some combination? Like what kind of
we definitely wanted to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So the game uses the same rules on the land and on the sea. Obviously, ships have their own little unique rules, but to move around and stuff because they got to deal with wind and they got to deal with stuff like that, and being hit by cannons and whatnot. But it's the same game typically, so you can kind of do. In your typical land game, for example, like the way it's going to work is you can kind of build an army. So you could show up to your game club or your game store and have your force built. And if you happen to have a ship in your force and your opponent doesn't, you just kind of slap some water on the other side of the table. And then you can just use your ship to cannonade on land while you play a regular land scenario where you're trying to grab objectives and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that, or if you both have ships, then it becomes a sea game. And because of that, we've made sure that the land game plays on a 3x4 board. So you can you can make half your regular 6x4 table all water if you need to. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I was looking at some of the upper pledge levels where you had some of the cool fat mats and the mats that could add islands and stuff. That's pretty slick. So you can see how you could do that. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, does it handle I'm getting all the scenarios. I should probably get back to the basics. But were you guys thinking about handling like fortress assaults and things like that too? So can defenders spend points on defensive positions while the attacker has a ship or something like that?
Right. We're gonna have a scenario in the book for fortress assaults. In the future, we do plan on actually creating some models for forts that are going to kind of follow. That are going to. I mean, the forts right now basically function exactly like a ship that's much tougher that doesn't move.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to build some ships. I mean, some fortresses around that, and then we're going to make like some forces that are designed to be used in a fort, so you can kind of include them in your army.
Oh, very
So
cool.
that's going to be a future plan for now.
Very cool. So that's awesome, Mike. So what kind of I want to think about the mechanics here a little bit. So when you're thinking about the mechanics for this game and you're coming up with the rule set, how did you build into the mechanics sort of that the feel for the period and the piratey feel you wanted to get out of the game?
So we basically tried to focus on the period and the setting.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike in Europe during this time frame where it's pike and shot kind of battles and thousands of men on the field and stuff like that, these are tiny little skirmishes compared to that. And the weapon of choice is the musket, the flintlock musket specifically. And so the games kind of tend to be kind of shootouts because of that, which is how it played out historically.
Mm-hmm.
And and then you eventually, of course, there's plenty of opportunities for melee, especially when it comes to ship combat. But so we've kind of used a lot of the tactics that are going to be reflected in unit special rules and their stats and stuff like that. So like one of the things is when you have your shoot and your melee stats, you have two numbers. You have an offensive value and a defensive value. So for shooting, your defensive value represents how well that unit uses cover.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're the more type of guerrilla New World fighters where they're learning like from Native American type fighting and stuff like that, they're going to be better at taking cover. Where if they're more like European style troops that are standing out in lines, they're going to have a pretty bad cover save. And so to make sure we had all this right and we're getting all these details correct, we hired a consultant by the name of Benderson Little, who is he's an author. He wrote a bunch of books like Sea Rover's Practice, which if you're a war gamer, you'll love this book. It's great. It really gets to the nitty gritty of pirate tactics.
So that's Sea Rover's Practice? Is that what it's called?
Yes, the Sea Rover's Practice.
Ooh, I gotta write that down.
Yep,
yes, it's a fantastic book. So he does consultation with Black Sails, and he's done some stuff for History Channel and stuff. He's
cool.
He's a human encyclopedia for this stuff. Like
that's cool.
You can never get a short answer out of him about any of this stuff. So we asked him like, hey, like what color is this? And we get like a paragraph of information with 100 pictures. It's fantastic.
Nice.
So so he's been we've reviewed everything with him. So we want to make sure everything's really accurate. And obviously fun comes first. This is a game. We want to make sure it's fun too. So it's a little more bloody than would be realistic. Mm-hmm. So but because of that, it still kind of keeps the flavor of the period and all those little nitty-gritty details. That answer your question okay?
Yeah, it did. Okay, great. That's very cool. and how did you sort of incorporate, so it sounds like you have really cool sort of mechanics for the infantry, and how did you sort of keep it, how did you sort of tie that together with mechanics for the boats in such a way that it keeps the rule system pretty straightforward? So
what boats do is they basically just add to what's already there.
Okay.
So your infantry unit will work the same on a boat than it does on land, with the exception there's certain rules that aren't applicable. You guys can't line up into formation on the deck of one of these small ships, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you wouldn't get certain perks that you get from that on more drilled units. Mm-hmm. But basically, while you guys are on a ship, they're basically treated as if they're in any kind of other structure, whether it be a building or a fortress, meaning that they occupy sections within it.
Right.
So the three sections. So a ship will be, or boats are one section, so just one little open part, and a ship, for example, say like our brigantine or frigate, will have a forecastle, a midship section, and a quarterdeck, and each of those is like kind of like just a little section that your units occupy. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to do any measuring from within the ship's hull to move your guys around in there or anything. They just kind of occupy the space,
right?
Which keeps things kind of clean and simple and straightforward. And it makes it just keeps the game flowing nicely. And then you just measure from that section whenever you're going to do shooting or anything. So we really just add what's in the land game right into the ships.
Very cool. Now, do the ships kind of run themselves, or do you have to actually have models crewing the various positions of the ships, like the guns and the sails and the steering?
So the ships will kind of run themselves while the sails are out. Now, your crew can take actions to do things like increase or reduce sail, to repair any kind of critical damage you may have taken, and you do have to have models assigned to guns in order to reload and fire them.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Now,
sounds fair.
You being a sailor, how did you balance your probably internal desire to make the sailing realistic while keeping the gameplay, pretty fast and easy?
Right. Well, the most important thing to me was that the gameplay was fast and easy.
Right.
So it was very easy to curtail all that grognardy sort of sailing part of me to make sure the game was fun first. So I just kept what's really important. So the one thing I definitely didn't want was allowing people to sail their ships into the wind, like some games will do, just to simplify it. And I get that; it's understandable, but it's not my thing. You cannot come closer than 45 degrees into the wind.
Right.
If you do so, you got to use your sailors to take actions to try to attack, or you're just going to drift backwards until you're out of that eye of the wind, and that's not a place you want to be. Mm-hmm. So then you basically, while you're sailing, if your bow is closer to the table edge that the wind is blowing from, and for those who don't know, bow is the front part of the ship, then you're going to often get a penalty to your ship's speed, because it's starting to get closer to the wind. It's more difficult for it to sail faster. Right. But when your stern, the rear of your ship, is closer to the wind, then you get no penalties. You just sail at your full speed. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of just simplified it, but at the same time made sure to capture all the minutia in kind of just a more abstract form of that. So that's pretty much all that there is to managing that part of the sailing.
Mm-hmm. That sounds cool. So you mentioned, I think this is interesting. So you mentioned that if you're trying to attack or do something else, you have to have some of your crew work on the sails. Does that mean the models that normally might be fighting would have to be focused on other things? So you kind of reduce your fighting strength while you're trying to manage things like tacking?
Sort of, yeah. So what it is you have, whenever you activate a unit, it's going to get a certain number of actions based on the card you activated it with. So actions that you may have spent reloading cannons or firing or something like that, you'll have to spend to take actions on maneuvering your ship.
Cool.
So it takes away from your action count is what it does.
Very cool. I like it a lot. It sounds really, really cool. It sounds like a lot of good stuff going on there. I can imagine the visuals. The pictures really inspire. I mean, it sounds like a very inspirational game. Obviously, you hooked Craig. He's already sucked all in.
I'm all in.
Which is fantastic. What was so you got all this excited, you got all this thought through, you figured out your rules, you got your guys helping you out with the models and everything and the presentation, and you went to Kickstarter and obviously it did well. What were some of the biggest surprises that you found when you went through the Kickstarter process with this?
So Kickstarter is interesting. It's very unforgiving in a lot of ways. So if you post an update, like we posted an update with one of the French flags for the French, and we had the wrong color on the flag, and that one went up by accident. And once it's up there, you can't take it down. You can't. It doesn't allow you to edit almost anything once it's up. So once you got to be it's. And you're on a clock, because once you have an update or something, and we got to a point where we were flying through goals and we didn't know what the heck to do. We weren't ready to go that fast on the goals, so we're just inventing these graphics on the fly, and we got them up pretty quick. Thankfully, we were ready to do that, but what we didn't realize that you couldn't edit it once it's up. So that was so a couple little things slipped through the cracks like that, but thankfully that was about the worst of it. But it's pretty. It's intense. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's you echo the sentiments of everyone. It's sort of like a wild roller coaster ride, or kind of thing. But with the good news is you really nailed your numbers, which is great. Did you really expect? I mean, obviously you're hoping you're going to make your goal. Did you really expect this strong of reaction to your stuff?
We hoped for it, that's for sure. We definitely thought there was a chance for it, so we were prepared. We were prepared for much more than what we did, thankfully, just in case. We were like, last thing we want to do is not be ready for, some wild wave of success. Yeah. So, but we definitely did much better than we thought we would. So, so we're really happy about that.
Fantastic. So thanks to the Kickstarter hitting so well, what is involved with the launch for Blood and Plunder now? I mean, how many factions do you guys end up with?
So we have a total of 5 factions.
Nice.
So factions in our game don't work exactly like they do in most games.
Okay.
Because of the nature of piracy and the Wild West kind of situation that's going on in the New World at the time, what we did instead of doing regular factions is we did nationalities, and there's factions within each nationality.
Oh, okay.
So you can choose a nationality, and then there'll be some, such as our Brethren of the Coast, that have no nationality and just kind of pick things from everywhere. So you pick a nationality, and that nationality has certain units in it. And then there would be factions that allow you to organize those units in a certain way and give you some different options. So you can maybe make some guy who's trained, you can make them veterans instead, and they maybe get a different special rule in this list than they do in another list. Mm-hmm. So within the same nationality, you can have a whole bunch of different factions and a bunch of different options. So we really have three nationalities, which is France, England, and Spain. And then we have for Spain, we have the Guardas Costas, the Spanish Caribbean Militia. Mm-hmm. And for the English, we have the English Buccaneers, the English Caribbean Militia. Then we have for France, we have the French Buccaneers. And then we have the Brethren of the Coast, which are unaligned.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. That's great. Sounds like a lot of great variety.
That sounds like 6 to me.
It does, a little bit.
Yeah, I may have miscounted.
Yeah. It's even better. You're underselling.
And how many did you end up with? How much variety is in each faction in terms of like different scopes and things?
So each faction has, I believe right now of unique sculpts, it's 18, with the exception of the French, who have 14. Nice. That's all we had ready for this moment. We have a bunch of other ones we're going to do, but we don't want to overdo it. We want to make sure we can only do what we absolutely know we can produce.
Well, that's smart. So, but it sounds like you have a good selection. I mean, I'm really surprised and impressed by the amount of variety you have right out of the gate here. And then,
well, I feel like it's not enough personally. Well, I wanted to do so much more, but
Yeah, but I like
as a starting point, it's insane.
I think it's really good. And then you also have, and then add to that, you have the 3 large ships plus the longboat. Now these are faction independent, right? So anybody can have a sloop or a brigantine or a frigate or whatever, right?
Yes. One of I've definitely been a little overambitious in my original thinking. One of the things I wanted to do was do unique ones for each nation, so that you have some little, some of the cool little details. But I quickly discovered that was not very possible to do.
and it's good that you realize that.
Yeah,
too,
it's good though.
A lot of people get bogged down in that kind of dream, and they don't cut it loose, and it drags them down.
Yeah, no, we would have. We realized that very quickly. Thankfully, we had a situation in the beginning where we had all these grand ambitions, and as the reality of everything started setting in, we just kind of realized real quickly we got to just cut this down to its bare form and just move forward. We're never going to get this thing out.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to go to Kickstarter until we knew exactly what we were going to have, what was ready to go, and what we could definitely get out.
Nice.
So. Because there's been some horror stories on Kickstarter, and we did not want to be one of them.
Yeah. Great. And then you can always, of course, what's cool too about the system you've got here is you can always add faction specific, like little mini add-ons or upgrades to the boats, right? Eventually,
right. That which is one of the things we've been flirting with to do in the future. But
very cool.
We'll see where that goes.
And just to kind of clean up towards the end as we finish up this. We haven't really addressed what's the time period for this game, because most people think when they think pirates, they think one thing, and you're far more focused on the actual history. So what time period are we talking?
So right now we're focusing primarily on the years from 1660 to 1690. Really, the rules work for anything from about 1600 to about 1750. Uh-huh. But the units and stuff that are in the game float around the 1660s to 1690s or 1680s.
Yep.
And which is the age of when it was. We chose this period specifically because most people think 18th century pirates like Blackbeard and Jack Rackham and all those guys, but those pirates, while are definitely more popular, they don't highlight what's really cool about our game, which is the true amphibious nature of it. Mm-hmm. So those guys didn't really ever fight on land; they just sailed around in ships and robbed fishermen and merchants. Whereas the Buccaneers of the 17th century, which were their forefathers basically, they went out there and they marched on major Spanish cities and fought actual battles, and they engaged the navy and they did all kinds of exciting things like that. So they were definitely the more attractive for the game purposes.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. And as Craig mentioned the period to give the flavor, I think we should also mention, we've talked a lot about the models, of course, and the rules, but we should also mention there's a lot of other cool sort of components for your game that also bring on the flavor. You got these action cards, which I like the art on. So can you describe quickly the action cards and what they look like and how they work?
Yeah, that's a cool, innovative mechanic.
Cool, thank you. So it's basically just a regular 52 card deck. And what we've done is that's how the game started, and what we did was we just basically got all the rules stuff that goes along with that and just printed it right on the card. You could play with regular cards if you didn't have our decks, and that would work, but it would definitely be more referencing of rules. So the card basically has a suit, the number, like a regular playing card, and that's going to determine the amount of actions units get when you activate with them. So what you do is the game has an initiative basically between each activation. So each player picks one card from their hand, places it face down, and then they reveal them once they've both placed them. The suit determines which player is going to activate a unit first. So if you have it uses regular poker order for suits. So spades are the fastest card, while clubs are the slowest. But the faster the card you play, the less actions it's going to give you generally. So you kind of have to choose between, am I going to attack first, but I don't have enough action. So oftentimes you really want to fire first, but you've got a bunch of reload markers on your guys, so you won't be able to fire. You won't be able to activate them and fire with that card because it doesn't give you enough actions, for example.
Right.
So you kind of got to go back and forth, and then you do that each time between each unit activation. So it's going to go back and forth between units, and you're going to have to kind of make those decisions of, do I want to kind of try to go second here or first? And there's some situations where you definitely want to do both. So
very cool.
It creates a pretty fun mechanic.
It sounds awesome, and not only that, but it gives you an opportunity to make these different faction-specific decks to add more flavor and art to it, which is awesome.
And create a much more fluid gameplay from activation to activation, which is cool.
Exactly.
Right, and what as one person described it is, we got something boring and mundane like initiative and turned it into a fun, innovative mechanic.
Exactly, that's awesome.
Absolutely, that's exactly how I felt.
And you've got also all kinds of other cool stuff too. You got these great marker dice, which are just ways to mark different statuses, but they look really cool.
And we chose to use dice instead of traditional markers, by the way, because when your models are on the ships, it's a heck of a lot easier to pick them up in and out of the ship.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Good play testing there. You got the cool Firelock D10. So the game's a D10 system?
Yes, the D10 system. D10 is all you need for everything.
Great.
I got to say, the faction D10s are great, but the actual Firelock D10 is an awesome pirate D10, and that's what I'm going with.
You got to go with that.
That is technically also the unaligned faction D10. So
yes, I noticed.
It'll work for that as well. Yes.
Coincidentally, the faction I will be going with.
But a bunch of other cool upgrades, too, including the cannons for the ships. So the cannons are actually little metal models that go on the ship, right? And then you've got different sizes.
Correct.
There's a medium cannon, so the ship's got a different weight of guns?
Yes, we basically broke it down to light, medium, and heavy guns. None of the ships we have right now can actually carry heavy guns, so we haven't made those models yet. Those are going to be more for fortifications and bigger ships, which we plan on doing in the future.
Ooh, ship of the line. Ship of the line, Mike, just saying. And then you got the accessories kit, too, which is that just bling to make your ships look even cooler, or do they have mechanics to them, too?
No mechanics. Those are just to make the ships look nicer. Little details like tillers and lanterns and stuff like that.
Oh, the tiller. Nice.
Yeah, there's a tiller. There's a little lantern. There's some anchors there. And then you got your doubloons, which I think are just for fun and profit, right? I mean,
no,
those
that's
are actually
part of the game, Russ.
Oh, I missed the doubloon rules. How did I miss that?
Nice. How could you miss the doubloon
All
rules?
right, so how did the doubloon work, and why do I need cool-looking doubloons?
You're going to love this, too.
All right, hit me.
So this is great. Anybody who just has terribly bad luck all the time will enjoy this part of the game.
Okay.
We have a system called Fortune, which Fortune basically gives you. Generally, you get 3 points to use throughout the game, and you use the doubloons is just a fun way to keep track of it. And so what Fortune does is it allows you to re-roll anything throughout the game, or draw a new hand of cards if you need to, or even if your commander is suddenly overwhelmed and removed as a casualty, if there's a unit nearby, he can escape and go join them. So the Fortune points allow you to basically mitigate bad luck in terrible situations, but they're limited. So you have to use them very carefully, and don't be the type of person who often will use them all in the first turn.
Oh, very cool. That's
such as myself. So
well, that's so cool, Mike. This sounds fantastic, and I can't wait for it to become available nearby. I know Craig bought I think 2 of everything, so that'll be awesome. But when do you guys think this will actually be hitting the streets?
So we're hoping it will be hitting the streets by the end of the year. We're right now kind of gearing up production, getting things going. We're casting ships and minis and getting new molds in every day. So we're pretty confident So unless there's some major hang-up, we should be able to get everything in stores by the end of the year and hopefully to backers before the end of the summer.
So that's important, too. So this is actually the kickoff of a whole new game system that you're planning on selling in stores and continuing to evolve and promote as time goes on. It's not just a Kickstarter thing.
Absolutely. We've already talked to some distributors and whatnot, and we have some. So we're pretty set on that. Once we get everything to the backers, then from there we start giving it to distributors and stuff. So we definitely have a lot of big plans for this game. We want to expand it. We want to go forward in time, backward in time, add new models, add new factions, add all kinds of stuff.
I think your timing is perfect, Mike.
I
mean, so far, when you look out there and you see, if you go to Adepticon or Gen Con, you'll see some companies selling these boats, and then you'll see some clubs doing their own homebrew rules. But I don't think I've ever seen, short of the old GW one, this kind of game that kind of brings it all together, which is awesome.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And Mike, if people want to find out more, they have two ways to do it, right? They can go to Kickstarter and, of course, look for Blood and Plunder there, or they can go to firelockgames.com, right?
Right, yeah. Firelockgames.com it's our landing page right now. Mm-hmm. The full website will be up and running probably in June, I want to say. I think it's pretty sure it's going to be June. But right now we do a lot of communication with our customers and stuff on Facebook. Ooh. So you can facebook.com/firelockgames. Pretty sure is what it is.
Right.
And you can just search Firelock Games, will come up. But we're on there, and that's where we communicate with people the most. So that'd be the best place to get information right now, probably.
Well, very cool.
That's perfect.
Craig, you got any last questions for Mike here before we
No, I got all my questions in at the end there.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for giving us the spiel on Blood and Plunder. We're going to take a quick break now. We'll hear from Total Fangirl and other stuff, and we'll be back in a little bit for a big game review.
It's time to hit some minis.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakelin and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out, as always, is to our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation, and you too can support the show. Thank you very much. So the summer movie season is upon us. It's the end of May, and the most recent movie that I think, I don't know, does it qualify as a blockbuster if people are really excited about it, even if it doesn't make a mint, because I don't think this one has yet. The movies are starting to roll out, and the one that we saw this past weekend was X-Men Apocalypse. No spoilers. If you haven't seen it, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything. But that was the thing about it, is that you couldn't really spoil this because it kind of just felt like rehashing other movies. And it was a little disappointing. It had all these different pieces that felt like they were going to make sense, and then you felt like they were all going to kind of come together, but they didn't. And I found myself sort of disappointed because I really enjoyed the first X-Men movies that came out, the originals, I guess you call them now. And now this sort of rebooted, alternate-y kind of universe thing that's coming out, I don't like it. I'm finding that it's not doing it. Even I was excited about seeing Sansa Stark as Jean Grey. I can't think of the actress's name, but she's Sansa Stark. Everyone watches Game of Thrones. You know who I'm talking about. And I was excited to see her, and she was really good. And it was good to see her not, being tortured in Westeros. That's a nice change of pace. And instead being large and in charge. But even that couldn't save it for me because it just, somehow it's not capturing my attention and my heart the way that the first movies did. And I'm not sure what it is. It's a little disheartening. It's a little sad. I love these movies. I remember seeing the first couple X-Men films and loving them. Loving to the point that I didn't know a lot about the X-Men. I know who they are, but I didn't know details about them. And I went and bought some of the novels that you can buy at, Barnes & Noble about the X-Men, whatever was out back then. And I bought those and read them because I really wanted to know more about these characters and wanted to know more about their stories. Here's the thing. After I saw this movie, I did not want to read more about these characters. I did not want to know more about their stories. And they're the same characters, essentially. So it's kind of sad because they're the same, but now I don't like them as much. And I'm not really sure why. And I'm not sure if it was that the movie wasn't as good as the others, if it's something about the story, or, gosh, is it possible to grow weary of a franchise even if you love the franchise? I mean, I love the X-Men. Go Wolverine. I love him. But somehow this just didn't have any of that sort of pop and that real pulling you in like the originals did. So without spoiling anything at all, I really didn't like X-Men Apocalypse, and neither did Russ, and neither did the girls. The girls found plot holes galore, and that was what bothered them. But I was mostly bothered that I didn't feel the love for this one and for the characters. Somehow it just didn't. There was one scene, I'll give it one scene, and I can't say anything without spoiling anything, but there is one scene early on in the movie that lasts a very brief time for one character in which I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then whatever they captured there went... And I never felt that again. So I was very supremely disappointed and felt that the movie has kind of lost me. So maybe the franchise has kind of lost me. I'm wondering if anybody else feels the same. So if you've either seen the movie and are a fan of the X-Men, and just how you feel about it these days, and if Apocalypse did it for you, or if you felt a little bit when you walked out of the theater. So I'd be curious to hear what you think. I always love getting emails. You can email me. It's just nwakelin@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I would love to know what you think. So if you're planning on seeking out summer movies and you're a huge X-Men fan, well, I guess you're going to go see Apocalypse, but hopefully you're not as disappointed as I was.
Hey! Well, it's time now for us to talk about our favorite Canadian tour group leader, and that, of course, would be Terrace at Geek Nation Tours.
And let us tell you what it's all about. See what I did there?
A boot. What's in a boot?
So if you head on over to...
You know what it's a boot? It's a boot going oot in a boot.
Oh, geez.
Okay, that's about it.
If you head on over to geeknationtours.com, you will find all the greatness that is Terrace and his amazing tours, designed specifically for you, the passionate nerd/geek. And it doesn't matter if you're passionate about games, or you're passionate about sci-fi and fantasy, or you love Star Trek or Doctor Who or whatever. Terrace has a tour for you. For example, if you go on the Gen Con tour this summer, for example, well, that just closed, but so you missed this year. But it's always a great event because you get to go down and get to see people, podcasters like us. But like that tour, like many others, what's great is Terrace will take you on the local cool geekery to see beyond just the con, right? So he'll make sure you don't miss any of the greatness at those events, but also see all the things that are going on around, out and about also in those areas. Craig, what are some of the tours that appeal to you?
Well, there's all kinds of tours, Russ. No matter what you're interested in, if you're interested in historical battles, you've got the Battle of Little Bighorn tour. You've got the Signature Battlefield Series World War II battles all across Europe.
Look at the Greece and Sparta tour.
I know. Just the T-shirt for that is going to be epic.
I know. That looks awesome, too. Or Journey to Middle-earth tour, which is over down there in New Zealand. I want to do that one. He's got the... Geek Nation Tour, Order of the Phoenix Tour, which, of course, takes you to all the cool J.K. Rowling spots in Harry Potter in England. You name it, he's got it. Check it all out. There is no better way for you as a nerd to travel and make sure you hit all the bestiest, nerdiest spots.
That's right, and he will treat you well.
That's right. GeekNationTours.com.
I'm Rafe Hollywood Granger, and this is the Hollywood Minute.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another rendition of the Hollywood Minute with your host, Rafe Hollywood Granger. Well, for this one, it is the middle of May. It's a beautiful May day. It feels like fall. It's a little bit windy. Sun is behind the clouds. It's fun. I was out picking up sticks from the yard, and you know you're getting old when that feels like a back workout. But on to things relative to gaming. This is going to be a very special Hollywood Minute because I am going to share with all of you that I am retiring the Hollywood Minute from the bi-weekly appearance here on the D6 Generation, and I'm also going to be taking a hiatus from appearing quarterly on the show. I'll explain all why in a minute, but before you panic, I still am going to appear on the year-end show. I don't know, it's just I talked to Russ and Craig, it's nothing to do with them, it has everything to do with me, which I'll share here, and the Hollywood Minute was just, I felt like I said all that I had to say, and so I want to just take a hiatus from it. Who knows? I may. I have some other ideas from actually other podcasts, whether they are segments or fledged into full podcasts. I don't know. They're relative to the gaming industry in a different area than before that I've explored. I still do want to do my gaming documentary, but yeah, life's just gotten pretty busy for me, which I'm great for. My law practice again is in a robust phase. I'm also business coaching and entrepreneur coaching, which has taken off a lot quicker than I thought it would, which again is very exciting. By the way, that reaches worldwide. I don't have clients out of the nation, but I do across state lines, and we talk via Zoom, which is like Skype, and so that's pretty fun. So I've just been busy in my life. And when it would be time for the Hollywood Minute, it started to feel like an obligation. And I know when that happens for me, that's bad. And so it's probably felt that way for maybe about 6 months. So I wanted to just make sure it wasn't a phase. But yeah, it was just like, what am I going to say? I just felt like I had nothing to say. And if I have nothing to say, then why say it? Now, part of that, and my friends will say, well, Rafe, you don't game anymore. That's not true, although it's definitely been a less of a focus. I don't know why. It's not because of anything really, other than I've realized I'm a variety is the spice of life kind of guy. I've always been that way. I have a lot of different hobbies that wax and wane. For example, I like to do magic, like prestidigitation and making coins disappear and stuff like that. I used to do kids' birthday parties when I was a teenager, and I still like to do magic, and I dig that every now and again. I'm a voracious reader. I haven't done that in a while, so I've been getting into the Killing Kennedy and Killing Lincoln books by Bill O'Reilly. I have taken up a new hobby, which is guitar. It's probably about 18 months old now, but it's taking a ramp forward in that I got together with a bunch of my local dads who also can play guitar, bass, and drums, and then a local mom who can sing, and lo and behold, next thing I know, we've got this kind of knocked-together band, and I'm playing guitar in a band, and I'm having an absolute blast with it. I mean, it is so fun. It's advanced my guitar playing through the roof. I mean, I'm only, was barely able to string 4 chords together when we started, and now I'm accompanying in a couple songs, and nothing Eddie Van Halen like, but definitely doing some rhythm guitar and making it sound like a song. That's been taking up some of my time. And yeah, I just haven't been gaming. You've heard we've had a flux of a gaming location. That's made it a little bit difficult. I don't think I've played a board game, and I haven't missed it in probably 6 months. I still play miniature game. I play Flames of War with Andy. I still play D&D, which I enjoy. So I've been kind of just, going to game night maybe 2 times a month and leaving the other 2 open to do some Xbox gaming or some PC gaming. I'm in a new MMO called Black Desert Online, which I really like. I still like playing Tom Clancy's The Division. So I'm still gaming, but just in a different flavor. I also noticed conventions. I mean, I haven't gone to a convention and have not missed it in a long time. I miss the people. I miss bumping into Romeo. I miss bumping into Sam of Games and Gears. I miss seeing John Damaris from Use on Minis. I miss seeing... I just drew a name of a blank, but Terrace, Geek Nation Tours, and I'm sure I'm leaving other people out. I don't intend to, but it's fun. It's fun to go see the people, but for me, a lot of the talk about gaming and stuff is what's new and what's current for the show would happen at conventions, and I haven't gone. I also made a promise, as many of you followers know, listeners from a long time ago, that I always tell the truth. It's tough for me to get away on a convention, and the payoff hasn't been worth it. Being self-employed, my wife works in the hospital, she works weekends, it would really dip into our monthly cash flow budget for me to go away. Not only was I not earning income, I then had to catch up when I got back. And, of course, the out-of-pocket expense of a convention, it made it not worth it. I also want to start taking more family vacations, so taking that time that I am away to be able to spend that with family as my kids get older and will be, moving out of the house somewhat soon. I mean, my teenager's now 15, so it's happening soon. So I just wanted to share that with you, especially the variety. That's why I'm not saying goodbye. I'm not saying I'm quitting. I'm not saying I'm retiring, because it's most likely going to cycle around. I love podcasting. As a matter of fact, I still podcast in a business sense. If you want to catch that, that's on the Power of One podcast. That's for BNI. BNI. You can look up and Google what that is. It's a business networking group. And the podcast is called Tim and Rafe's Reads. Again, it's on the Power of One feed, and it comes out monthly. So I'm still, if you want to hear the dulcet tones of my voice, you'll hear me there. I'm having fun with that. So yeah, I'm not saying goodbye. I'm not retiring for good. I'm welcome to pop onto the show anytime I want, which is very kind of Russ and Craig to allow the schedule to do that. I can come on with a different segment. I can, let's say I have an epiphany 6 weeks from now about a Hollywood Minute segment. I can come on and do that. So that's my intention, but I want to be sincere. It's, I'm definitely planning on taking a nice hiatus for a while and just enjoy gaming in the way that I've been enjoying it now. I do want to say a thank you, as I do see this as sort of a farewell. I'd like to thank Ian. These are all been proud supporters of the Hollywood Minute, and they kind of would chime in every now and again, and different Twitter followers. I'd like to thank Ian of the Nerd Herders podcast, and Adam Pitzer, Doc, of course, who's become a lifelong great friend of mine and business partner. John Damaris, also become a great friend due to seeing him at some conventions. Matt Mangy, Crayola Smoker on Twitter. Fred Quiche. It's been enjoyable getting to know Navin of Painted Figs, although he and I haven't chatted in a while. But Navin, if you're listening, hello. Sam of Games and Gears, and of course Terrace of Geek Nation Tours. It's also really fun to get to know through podcasting John and Cody of Game On podcast. And see, that's a great example of what I'm talking about. You'll see John's back now. He's got his own Twitter feed. He's doing his own thing back in gaming again called Indiana John. And that's kind of how I vision it. Just going to take a break and see what comes up. A lot of this too, I'll end with this, is comes from me reading the book called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. If you haven't read it, I recommend reading it. It talks about, I think I've talked about it before, but it talks about how on purpose you look at a variety of things going on in your lives, whether they be business lines, relationships, things that you do, and you look at where all your energies are going. And then you realize what buds, to keep a plant analogy, that you want to flourish, that you want to give attention to, that you want to give water, and that a bush will produce more buds than it can viably sustain. And that's what I feel like I do with all my variety of things that I'm interested in. So what I did was I looked at different areas that I like, and they're fine. Everything's going great. You got great following. People are there. But, I'm like, what would happen if I snipped that branch? What other things would happen? What other opportunities would happen? What new things could I discover? And so that's why I'm snipping this one little branch for now. Could grow back, but from reading that book, and I did that with a line of my business line. I no longer do bankruptcy, and instead a place that I put entrepreneur coaching. If you want to check out what I'm talking about, I have a brand new website, rafegranger.com. That's my work side of me. But it was great. Like, I snipped my bankruptcy branch, and a new branch is this business entrepreneur coaching, which has been fabulous and led me some new introductions with some lawyers I haven't been in contact with, and it's been great. So that's what I did. So, hey, I just wanted to share the real reason why, and why you won't be hearing the Hollywood Minute for now, and maybe you'll hear a different rendition at some point in time. I don't know. So you will still see me active on Twitter. I really do enjoy Twitter, and that's where I plan to put my musings as they pop up. If you haven't followed me and want to, I'm the D6G Hollywood on Twitter, and you'll still find me there. Make sure you say hello. I guess it's time to say, with that, I'll say chowie for nowie, and until next time, happy gaming.
Hey, and welcome back. Moriturite salutamos est.
What?
We who are about to die salute you.
Ooh, excellent.
Thank you. We are now going to talk about a game that caught my eye, our eyes, actually, at Adepticon. And the path has been swift and brutal. And, of course, we're talking about Arena Rex from Red Republic Games. Yet another kickstarted miniatures game, which bodes well for others, let's say Blood Plunder. And it started in around 2013, I think, raised close to $250,000, Russ?
I think so, yes. If you look at the
right around there.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's yet another one of these that broke the 200,000 mark, which is a good, healthy number. And their web store, for those of us who missed out on the Kickstarter, went live in fall of 2015. So it's only been around for a little while.
Yeah.
It is, of course, gladiatorial combat with a splash of fantasy in a sort of altered history, like an expert of the Roman Empire might notice, other than the fact that there are monsters and Native Americans and things like that. They might notice the differences. As far as the actual history goes, I was reading the history and I couldn't tell where it started to diverge. It's really well written, but it's very close to the. I mean, I guess I know only the broadest overview apparently, but it's a really cool world. Obviously, it's built on the Roman Empire, and really cool miniatures. Russ, do you want to read why don't you read their blurb? And then they actually sent us something that was written by a gamer who wrote a blurb of his own that they love. So why don't you read the official blurb, Russ?
The longer one?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I'll try to do a dramatic reading.
You do it justice, my friend.
I don't have the reverb button anymore. Craig has that, so I'll have to do this. I'll do this a cappella. Sort of like live, unplugged, if you will.
I'll give you the note.
All right, here we go. Arena Rex is an innovative tabletop skirmish game. The experience has been built from the ground up to be tactically deep, yet streamlined and accessible. A low model count combined with easily digestible rules makes Arena Rex easy to pick up and play. Alternating activations, opposed die rolls, and out-of-turn reactions keep you engaged throughout the game. A dynamic round structure offers new gameplay and tactical opportunities unique to Arena Rex. Damage trees offer new levels of control with a flexible combat resolution system.
And all of that is true. But a gamer, one of those ombudsmen, those guys that love games so much that they go out there and they spread the word on their own. Arena Rex is a tabletop miniatures game set in an alternate history. Quick, intuitive gameplay, unique damage systems, and interactive rounds define the game. Easy to learn for casual board game fans with enough tactical complexity for longtime miniature wargamers.
That is a much better sales pitch.
It's like concise. And I think they wanted us to say that because of that whole board game thing.
Yes.
And the longtime miniature war games. That's the entire spectrum of the D6 generation right there.
There it is. Look at that.
Absolutely. So what you have here is innovative. You notice how they slipped that right in there.
Mm-hmm. I do.
A really cool game system that we're now going to delve into a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, but before we get to the rules, Craig, I think it's really important we talk about the factions and the models because that's what caught my eye. So when we were at Adepticon, and they had the Playmobil Arena set up, more about that later, and it just looked fantastic. And then when you looked at their model case and saw the amazing sculpts, and of course, they had amazing painters involved too, but the amazing sculpts and model ranges, that's what really caught our eye, and the fact that they have a nice selection of factions. So what is sort of the background and fluff material on these different factions and on the overall universe?
Well, the story basically, as far as I can gather, is it's the Roman Empire, but it's a vastly more complex and long-lasting Roman Empire than the Roman Empire that actually happened in our timeline. And so it's spread much farther. There's many more cultures that are sort of involved, and it's a much more complex society. Well, it's not more complex. The Roman Empire was a very complex society in and of itself. But it's a very complex social structure with gladiatorial combat sort of woven into the structure itself, where it's no longer, to the best of my knowledge, slaves that are fighting. It's actually an acceptable career option and something that is, as it was in real life, kind of a rock star mentality where these the crowds are going crazy for these sex objects, these rock star sized icons that are fighting in the pits.
Professional wrestling, but deadlier.
Exactly. Lethal, you might say.
Yes.
And currently right now they have 5 factions going out, and they call them soft factions, which is cool because basically you can actually have any models fighting with any models, because you could theoretically have, somebody, these games are being paid for by these rich patrons, and the patrons might pay, like, I want to have an Egyptian guy and a Viking guy both on the same team. So you can play that way. The only thing you lose is each of the factions or ludi or gladiator schools have a couple special rules attached to them, and you have to have 75% of your models be from the same ludi to get that special.
So there's basically
rules.
Synergy bonuses for having models from the same faction in the same.
Exactly. So to break it down very, very quickly, you've got the Ludus Magnus, which is the premier school in Rome, the gladiator school in Rome. So they're very classic Roman gladiators. The armor and the poses and the weapons are going to be very familiar to most fans of gladiator movies. Then you have the Legio. I've been trying to figure out 13 in Latin, and I even had a Latin teacher tell me, and I just keep forgetting. But it's the 13th Legion, which is the Roman legion responsible for Britain in this time period. And so it's kind of like got an early Middle Age, Dark Age British Celtic feel at the same time that you are seeing the Roman influence. The officers and the heroes are very Roman in their armor also. The Morituri is Egyptian style, very Egyptian. The Zephyri are Vikings, but the Vikings in this world have wandered farther afield, actually they did make it over here once or twice, but they brought more people over this time around in this fantasy setting. So there are Vikings and Native Americans blended together in the same faction. And then you have the Gorgons, which is where the real magic happens, or the real monsters. You have a Hindu, a green-skinned Hindu goddess, 6-armed woman-looking monster. You've got the classic Medusa, but her name's not Medusa, it's something else. And then you've got this kind of creepy ghost woman whose name is Medusa. So there's 3, and they're supposed to be sisters, and there's a lot of mythology and story behind those 3. And so those are your 5 factions. They've got a bunch of models, minimum of 6 models per faction. Most factions now also have a rider model. The mounted models are amazing also. So, Russ, why don't you talk a little bit first about model quality, or actually, Mike, have you seen any of these models yet?
I'm looking at them right now, actually. They look really nice.
They're beautiful models. Russ, what do you think, having played with them?
Well, I wanted to ask Mike real quick, after hearing the background and the sort of the fluff and the factions. What do you think about that? Does it appeal? How does it strike your fancy? Because I know you like sort of historical gameplay. What does this make you feel like?
Yeah, it seems pretty cool. I've always been interested in the in alternate history stuff. Play a little bit of Dust occasionally and stuff that. So, yeah, this looks pretty interesting. I like the low model count. I like the. It seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, I like what I see so far. Cool. Seems like the kind of thing I might be interested in.
So, Craig, to answer your question about the models, I have to say that the models look awesome. Both the ones we played with personally, as well as the ones I saw at Adepticon, because in the case they had some of the yet to be released ones, like we should say there's mounts in the game and things like that too. Yeah. So there's some really larger models, like there's a warrior on a giant scorpion and things like that. They look fantastic. They do come across in appearance, and you've assembled them, I haven't, but they do come across as being very dynamically posed, have a lot of little flying bits like scarves and cloth, and very thin weaponry, like very thin spear shafts and things. Yeah,
I'm already having an issue. I know a lot of guys who have spears and things have already broken completely. I'm having a huge issue keeping. I think it's Ben Luca, the one with the big long spear. Her spear is broken in one place and it's completely bent in another. So I actually just ordered a whole new set of pin vices, so I knew I would have the exact right size, and I'm going to replace it with a metal rod.
So it's more of that. So it's an advanced modeling thing, kind of like some of the Malifaux stuff, right? These are metals.
Yeah, I would absolutely say it's an advanced modeling thing. Yeah, they are very dynamic. I don't generally pin models. I don't find I need to really. I had to pin 2 different models. There's Aquila, the guy who's like leaping forward on one leg, And the lion, there's no way. The lion is standing on one foot. There's no way that thing's going to stand up unless you have like some super glue or you pin it, which is what I did.
Yep.
But it's not that hard to pin these things. It's just not like entry level stuff with the modeling. But once you've got them down, they're beautiful. They're very well proportioned. You just have to be very careful with some of the weapons and things. The old man Sulla, his sword is extremely thin. In fact, the demo game they had at Adepticon, his sword was broken, and because he looks like an beaten old man, I thought the broken sword was part of his backstory, but it's not.
So what are these? You mentioned one bit was bent, so I imagine they're metal then?
No, it's resin. It's a very, very thin resin. The spear.
So that's the only. I mean, that's a challenge, right? And so the really this is more of an advanced. And the other thing I noticed about them, I mean, again, they look awesome in person if you've got the patience and temperament to get them assembled. Did you find that they had a lot of flat surface? So it was painting it more of an advanced painting experience as well, or is there enough textures and things in the model that a casual painter could do a good job?
Absolutely, yeah. No, there's a lot of texture on these models. Everything is textured. Their leg wraps are all textured and all very, very, like deeply detailed. There are a couple big open shield areas that are intended for either painting on a design or putting on a decal. But right now I haven't gotten to that point. I've just painted the shield, and it looks beautiful.
Good.
So other than some broad shield surfaces, everything is detailed. Little buckles on all the armor is there. Yeah. That's not something I would be concerned with at all.
How was flashing and assembly? Was that pretty easy?
Oh, there almost no flash at all.
Oh, good.
And the assembly, I would recommend using a little bit of green stuff, a little bead of green stuff in most of the joins. Will make it hold immediately, so you're not stuck there holding the super glue stuff together forever. I think I assembled it all probably in less than an hour.
Oh, great.
Including the pinning, all 6 of those models.
Well, that's not too bad then.
No, it's not too bad at all.
So you get good quality models. You definitely, it's not for the beginner, obviously, but unless you just have a lot of patience and are willing to go there. How about price? So what were the starters prices again? I can't remember.
Well, the starter prices are $45 for 3 models, and where this places Arena Rex really, I've been like sort of gobsmacked 3 times in the last probably 6 months, and now I'm realizing what's happening. You're looking at about $18 to $20 a model,
right?
And that was like, wow, 6 months ago. And now I'm like, wow, that's what it is. That's what, I mean, that's what it is for the Marvel Miniatures game. And that's what it is for, there's another game. What other game that we're playing that, Guild Ball.
Guild Ball, right.
So these small boutique companies, these very small kind of one guy or one family shop companies are making these beautiful models, and they're not making it at a scale. They haven't reached a point yet where they can make them at a scale where the model price might come down to what I would consider, what would be a more mainstream price, except that is the mainstream now. I mean, if God forbid you look at a GW model, a plastic model, if it's an HQ, if they even have HQ anymore, those are going like $40 or $50 for a single plastic model now.
Right.
So my idea of the prices of miniatures is just wildly out of whack, is what I've figured. And all of these small skirmish boutique companies that I'm really finding myself attracted to now, this is what it is. And this is, and as long as you're getting the models that are beautiful and you enjoy them, then I think that's what you got to do. But $45, you got 3 minis and you have all the rules included. And each miniature comes with a card that has all of its details on it, and a really cool, beautiful art card that has the story of the mini on the back of it, and a little resin token, or it might resin or plastic, I'm not sure, that you use with the fatigue convention in the game, and a really neat base that's actually very reminiscent of the Wild West Exodus bases, because it's sort of artistic. It's more like a plinth than a base, really.
Yep.
It's got cool little details.
I don't think that's a bad price of entry when you consider you're getting and that rules pamphlet is the rules. The game does not have a lot
it's
of
all the
rules. So, and it's 3 models and it's $45, they're not huge models or anything, but I think it's a fair price. And to your point, Craig, given that even card games now are $45.
Right.
So
Yep.
so you're looking at a pretty
different world,
standard cost of entry now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about that, Mike? Given other costs of other games out there?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, because of the scale of the game, obviously they've put a ton of detail into each of these models because it's such a small model count game.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, buying one model is basically in the equivalent of like a larger scale game of buying like a unit. Right. So it's kind of, and you're going to spend the same amount for the same kind of game. So, obviously the company's got to keep their doors open. So if they're only selling a handful of models at the same price that a company's selling you 50 models for, they're never going to be able to stay afloat. So I think it makes sense, and it's fair for what you're getting. And they look great, and I think it's a reasonable price.
All right, I agree. Mm-hmm. So what about building the force, Craig? Like how much time do you got to spend really figuring out who you're going to take in your cohort?
Well, it's at the same time simple and very complex. It's simple in that there's really no point value. The point value comes in the number of cards that a model has. Okay. Almost every model in the game has one card, and that's it. And it has a damage track along the bottom. And when you get to the bottom of the end of the damage track, the model's done and he's over with. Some few models actually have 2 damage cards, and they have a note on them. You go to the end of the damage track on the first card, and that activates the second card, which might or might not have different abilities on it. The stats might have changed, and it has another damage track. So that model would be worth 2 models that only have 1 card each, and that's really the only point system. Balance so far is hard for me to say because I haven't played a lot of games outside of my little 13th Legion set. Almost all the games I've played have been with friends in my basement or a couple games at Gordon's. And what I have seen is if you look at the 13th Legion special rules, they have they have fewer special rules than everybody else. And the Egyptian guys in particular have some crazy special rules. The Vikings have an amazing special rule where they can react even if they're fatigued or exhausted. Mm-hmm. So I think I ended up, once again, through no fault of my own, just picking the faction that I enjoyed or that I thought was the most attractive physically. I have the faction that is kind of like baseline. So, I mean, if you go the Ludus Maximus, the Ludus Magnus, the traditional gladiator guys, they can use 3 favor a turn, which you guys will know more about in a minute. So everybody's got kind of beefed up except I think the Legion, but at the same time, I think I either won or came in second. We did a 4-way mass combat at Gordon's a little while ago. And those are just a blast too. The rules really lend themselves to multiplayer games also. So it's really, really easy. And so as far as typical model count goes,
it's just card count, right? So if I'm
if you're
not going to play a game, as long as we have the same number of cards, I might take a mounted guy on a giant beast, which is 3 cards, 2 for the beast, 1 for the guy, and you would take 3 regular dudes, 3 cards, 1 card each, and that's it. No points, nothing. Just go.
Exactly. And interesting side note trivia piece: a guy on a mount does not count as a last man standing. So that's a cool little thing that will make more sense later on also. So typical model count, you're looking at 3 to 5 models per side generally.
Yep.
So it's a very small, low model count game. And what you want to do is each model has 2, maybe 3 special rules that are unique to that model, or not common amongst most models. And you want to try to figure out which ones have good synergy amongst themselves. And of course, if you choose all from the same Ludus or 75% from the same Ludus, those models get that special ability, which we'll talk more about later. So it's really it's simple to kind of throw together really quickly. In fact, we've been doing just random draw or drafting amongst the 6 models that I have, and we've just been kind of rotating through whoever's standing around the table and doing either 3-on-3 or 2-on-2-on-2.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything that's like indicates one model's abilities really outstrip the other. They all have different things that seem really cool.
Exactly. And when you're playing in an environment as lethal as the arena with pits and all kinds of hazards everywhere, all it takes is one bad turn and your guy's dead anyway. So let's talk about the strongest guy can die in a single action if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, right. So let's talk about setup and getting things going. And I think
All right.
you mentioned pits, and I think the terrain is such a critical thing. So what do you need to get this playing? You definitely need an arena, right? What's a typical arena size?
Well, a typical arena size, they recommend about 2 feet, that your models start at least 2 feet apart. But if you dig a little deeper in the rule book, you will find out that it was designed for and tested in a 30-inch arena.
Diameter
and if you
circle,
happen to have a Playmobil arena, you measure that, it happens to be 30 inches.
Oh, what a
so
quickie
I
dinky.
think that might be where they did all their testing.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But at the same time, at Adepticon, we saw lots of guys playing it late at night after that first big rush of people bought half of their stock. And they were playing on regular miniatures board tables. They just had, they measured out the 2 feet or the 30 inches, and they had some fence pieces just to kind of outline where they couldn't go outside of that area, and maybe a tree or a couple walls or stuff in there as terrain. You want to have terrain. You don't want it to just be wide open expanse of sand. The terrain can be all kinds of different things, almost as vast as your imagination. And so you're going to need the rules, which you can get with the starters. You can buy. They have a beautiful bound rules book that has all the fluff and everything in it, and I think that's only $7.50. It's
cheap,
a small,
right.
it's a small,
Book.
almost like a pocket book.
Yep.
But it's beautiful, and the quality of the paper and everything is great. You can get the PDFs for free online at arenarex.com. Your forces, you've got to have those models. Like I said, 3 to 5 models is really all you're ever going to need. And each model has a card on that. The game itself is very basic. So the complexity and the deeper enjoyment is in the interplay of all of the different models with their different abilities and their different faction abilities and all the terrain. They really only have 4 stats each. They have move, attack, defense, and armor, and that's all on the card, and then their damage tree, which we'll talk about later, and then any special rules. You need D6s. It's a D6 game. You do need to have at least 2 different colors of D6s, though, for favor dice, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then you need a tape measure. It's a standard inches miniatures game.
Yep. And I would just add, you definitely want terrain. You definitely want and the kind of terrain you might see in a gladiatorial arena. So a couple pits, maybe some, something on fire or some other hazards. There's nice rules for all 3 of those kinds of things. A little water hazard or something. All works great, and it definitely requires maneuver. And because the game, it's not that you're like dodging and shooting guys in cover. It's more, can you maneuver around and get the guys back up against, the brazier of fire, or push them into the pit, or drive them back into where the lion is waiting for him or something.
Exactly. There are no ranged weapons in this game.
Right.
The closest you have to a ranged weapon is the Morituri, which are the Egyptian guys. They have one model that has a whip, and she has a 3-inch engagement range in her activation. So that's as much of a ranged weapon as you get.
But there's a lot of pushing and displacement in this game. So what you really want to do is maneuver yourself around in such a way to drive the enemy either into others of your models that'll set up some kind of cool chain, or into the various traps in the arena. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
All right, making sense so far, Mike? With us?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I'm interested to hear more.
So let's talk about how this plays. So, Craig, what are the basic rules here as we get ready to start?
Well, conventions you can pre-measure at any time. And so that's something to really keep in mind. Mainly what you're looking at is an alternating activation by model. So you're going to activate a model, then I'm going to activate a model, then Mike can activate a model, and we're just going to alternate and go around and around and around. But what changes that from any of the other games I've ever seen is this concept that they call fatigue levels. So your model is either ready, fatigued, or exhausted, depending on what it's done previously. So you could conceivably activate the same model over and over and over again every time your turn comes around, as long as all he's doing is moving and maneuvering. And then when he starts to attack, then he's going to get tired, then he's going to get exhausted, which is really cool because it gives you a lot more flexibility with what you're doing and where you're going to sort of put your focus, and which, like, either you want to move up all your guys slowly together in a group. Do you want to have one guy kind of run around the arena on the outside to try to flank? So there's a lot of different options available to you because of the concept of the fatigue levels.
And it's really simple to track, right? So a ready model has no tokens, and there's this double-sided token that comes, as Craig mentioned, comes with every model you buy. And on one side, it's just flat and smooth, and that means you put that side up, it means he's just fatigued. And then on the other side, there's a little line on it, and that means he or she is exhausted, right?
It's a theta, Russ.
Right. So there's basically either theta. So if that side's up, he's really exhausted. And then during your turn, you're basically going to do two basic things. You're going to reduce the fatigue by 1 on a model, so that means either make them from exhausted to fatigued.
No, you can't touch the exhausted.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. You can't.
You can all you can do is remove a fatigue.
Right, remove 1 fatigue token if it's out there, and after you do that, you can then activate a model that didn't start fatigued. So basically, you can activate a model that never had a token on it this turn. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And as you mentioned, actions are really simple, right? You can always make your first move as free. Doesn't cost any fatigue. And then after you take your free move, you can do one of the following additional things at the cost of increasing your fatigue level, right? You can move again, you can attack, or you can power attack. And the difference between attack and a power attack is how much fatigue you gain, right? So if you do a regular attack, you just go from ready to fatigued once, 1 level of fatigue. If you go for a power attack, your attack will probably hit more, but you have to go from ready to all the way to exhausted, which, as Craig mentioned earlier, it's harder to get rid of exhausted, and it exposes you to bad counterattack options.
Bad juju,
right?
And it's very simple. A regular attack, you're rolling your dice, and what you see is what you get. A power attack, you're rolling your dice, you get to reroll unsuccessful dice. So it's very simple, but at the same time makes that power attack potentially far more, interestingly enough, powerful.
Yeah, and it's very simple, right? So I move a guy. Then it's Craig's turn. He moves a guy. Then Mike moves a guy. It's back to me. I move another guy. Craig moves another guy. And then Craig might decide, okay, now we're getting close enough. He moves his guy, and then he says, now I'm going to fatigue, and he gets close enough and attacks me, right?
Right. And we should say you can take as many actions as you can until you're exhausted. So you could take your free move, then attack again. You could take a free move, take another move, then attack. So you don't have to. You can stop after your free move. You don't have to move at all if you don't want to. Right. But basically, you're going to push your fatigue each turn, and then that fatigue is going to have effects in later turns.
Right. Okay. And go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say I have a question about that whole sequence. So if one of my characters that I'm activating is fatigued, I can unfatigue him and then activate another character?
Yes.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, you can't
exactly.
You can't activate the guy you unfatigued in the same turn. So you gotta have another guy you can move, but you can unfatigue one guy and you can move somebody else.
Gotcha. If you're down I glazed over the rules earlier, and that part was a little confusing. I didn't see a difference between fatigue and exhausted, so that's it right there.
Now there's another kind of turn.
So it's like a delay. For the character.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
One of the few complaints I have is the wording of the fatigue state, and that one of those fatigue states is called fatigued. So I found that a little confusing. But basically what you're doing is you can remove 1 fatigue, and then you activate a model, but you can't activate the model who started the turn fatigued.
Right.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yep. And if you're exhausted, you can't remove that token. The only way to, as Craig mentioned earlier, to get rid of exhausted is to do a clear turn. And you can't do a clear turn unless all your models have either a fatigue token on them or an exhausted token on them, right?
Yeah,
so basically what's going to start happening is as you're going to kind of keep moving your models around, you're going to exhaust one guy, and you're not going to be able to fix him until you've fatigued or exhausted everybody else. And so you're going to start – it's kind of like poker where you're kind of dancing around. All of a sudden you're all in for a turn. You make your big play, and now you've got to kind of get some distance from your opponent and kind of recover a little bit. And so the clear turn's really simple. It's if all my models, if I start my turn where all my models are fatigued or exhausted, which as we just said, if all my models have tokens on them, none of them can activate this turn because the rule is even if you take one off, you can't activate anybody. So then you're in clear turn mode. When you do clear turn, all that means is you can reduce the level of fatigue by 1 for everybody. And this is where it is confusing, as Craig mentioned, because they call the states fatigue, and also the middle state is fatigue. So when I say reduce 1 fatigue, I mean you're going to go down 1 level. So if you're fatigued, you go down to ready. If you're exhausted, you go down to fatigue. So that just basically means you flip the exhausted one over and you take the fatigue token away.
Right.
So basically, if I'm going to fatigue somebody, if I'm going to exhaust somebody on purpose, I may as well exhaust everybody, because the next time I go around with all my models, I can do is take off fatigues.
You might, but there's other things. What's neat about this game is there are other tactical reasons to leave guys not exhaust everybody.
Yeah, exhausting comes with a price.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So the clear turn's really pretty simple. You do reduce everybody down 1, but then you get this extra little bonus thing, which is called tactics, and you can then spend some glory normally, right, to do a tactical thing, and we'll get to more of those in a second. But basically, what you need to know right now when you're starting teaching the game to someone is, hey, during your turn, you can activate a model. You can really push them to get them either fatigued or exhausted, but just know when you start doing that, you're going to have to wait for one of those clear turns to get those exhaustions down to fatigues again.
Yeah.
Making sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
So one other thing that happens that's sort of interesting is, as Craig mentioned earlier, is this last man standing concept, which is to make the game exciting. If you only had one guy left and he was locked into exhausted mode, you'd pretty much be sitting there. You'd have one clear turn where he goes from exhausted to fatigued. Then you have to wait again. You get another turn to go from fatigued to ready. Then you'd activate him, attack. You back to fatigued again. Now you got to wait again. And so all of a sudden, the guy with 3 models have a huge advantage to the guy with one guy. So what they did with Last Man Standing is when you're down to your very last model, every turn becomes a clear turn, and you get an activation.
Yeah.
So a bench, basically, your guy's he's just fighting for his life now. He realizes he's in trouble, and he gets a little more actions per turn. And it actually becomes sort of a nice, powerful way to sort of make a big grand finale, right?
Right. We should also say there are other ways to remove exhaustion, but they're more specific to different models.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that when we talk about your damage tree, one result that you might possibly get on that is called reposition. And if you reposition and you're not engaged with an enemy, then you get to remove 1 level of fatigue. So that's I always forget that.
Right. So there are other mechanics to remove it, but that's the primary mechanic. For
exactly. That's the primary one.
Now, so let's talk about the basics of combat and things like that too. It'll make it a little clearer. But one of the things tactically you want to think about when you're exhausting your characters and leaving tokens on them is there's this concept of reactions as well, right? So while you're activating a guy, Mike, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, do I want to react to that? But you can only react if your model is ready. That means he has no tokens on him. So this goes back to your question earlier. Well, if I'm going to exhaust one guy, why don't I just exhaust everybody? Well, the idea is that if I exhaust one guy but leave another guy unexhausted and ready, then I can react when Craig tries to go take advantage of the fact that one guy is exhausted, right? So he might, because whenever you attack an exhausted model, you get bonus situations as well. So by leaving one guy exhausted, he's open, he's ripe for the picking, and he's a tempting target. But if I've got someone in a position to react, I can try to lure people in for. So the reaction mechanic's really, really nice, and I like that, and it really keeps you very engaged with what your opponent is doing.
Cool. So if I had a guy who was exhausted, I could kind of shield him with my other guys to protect him. And then that way, if anybody tries to come near him, they could like react and attack him or something.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So we'll get to that in a second.
Very
but let's go through the basics of combat because it's really simple. So most of the stats in the game just simply have a number, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to attack Craig and I've moved up for free, and then I'm going to say, okay, Craig, I'm going to attack your guy. So I'm going to fatigue myself now to get that attack swing in. And I look at my character's card, and it says attack value 5. Well, that means I get to roll 5d6 to try to get Craig. And this is one of those success system games. So basically any 4 or better on a d6 is a success. There are no exploding dice or anything else like that. So I'm going to roll those 5 dice, and I'm hoping to get 4s or better. Now, Craig has got some number as a defensive value in his guy. It'll say defense, let's say 2. And so that means Craig gets to roll 2 defensive dice, and every 4 or better he gets cancels one of my successes, right?
Right.
Now, one more twist here is this idea, and I love this mechanic, of glory. So there are things that happen in the game. Favor, sorry. There are things that happen in the game that give you favor. And this is sort of the favor of the crowd, and the crowd's cheering, and like home field advantage, right? And I believe everybody starts the game with 3 flavor. Is that right, Craig? 3 favor?
Favor.
3 favor? Yeah, okay.
Your flavor is up to you.
Your flavor of favor. So this is where Craig mentioned earlier that you should have different colored D6s. So what you can do is to remind yourself you have some favor is you give each player 3, let's say you have another colored die. Craig has these light blue clear dice. So everybody's got 3 light blue clear dice to say, hey, that's our favor dice.
Red Republic makes awesome marbled favor dice.
So you want
just
a favor dice
that
pool.
out there.
And the reason you do is because it helps you track how much favor you've got access to, and it's a resource you spend, but you spend the resource as an extra die roll. So if I'm going to make that attack on Craig, I can choose to add any amount, right, Craig?
No, up to 2.
Oh, so
you can only use up
two
to
favor
2.
dice.
Any model can only use 2 favor in its entire turn.
Cool. Okay. So I can then grab up to 2 of those favor dice and add them to my roll of 5 dice, and that has 2 advantages. 1, it's adding more dice to my attack, but 2, anytime I get a success on a favor die, it's worth 2 successes instead of just 1.
Yep.
So they're doubly good. And remember earlier we mentioned those power attacks, which exhaust your guy, get your reroll, and he misses. So those are the ones you want to throw favor in, because if those favor dice miss, it's good to be a reroll on those because they're worth double the success counts, right?
Yeah. And the opponent you're attacking can also add up to 2 favor
in his defense.
Yep.
And again, it adds double successes as well. So Craig might see me getting ready to roll 5 plus 2, so 7 dice, and be like, oh God, I got to use my favor 2 to stop this. And he throws 2 in there as well, and he's throwing 4 on defense, hoping for a lot of successes. So It's really simple. I'm going to roll my dice pool. I'm going to add some favor in there if I want to. Roll my dice. I'm looking for as many 4 pluses as I can get. I look at my die roll and say, Craig, I got 3 successes. And then Craig rolls his defense pool. If he gets the same number or more successes than I got, then he completely repelled my attack. I get nothing. But if I beat him by some number, then I'm going to do some hopefully awesome results on him. Mm-hmm. And now we go to this little sort of tree of icons that is on each character card, and they're different by character.
Yeah.
And you look down from the tree from the top, and you can pick different paths in the tree. There's usually branching paths on many of the characters, and you can choose the different icons that have effect. You get to go down 1 level in the tree for each success you got. Right? So if I got 1 success, I only get the first level of the tree. If I got 3 successes, I get the first one. Then maybe I can choose between which of the second level I want to take. And then at the 3rd level, I can choose maybe based on that as well. And I can have 3 different effects. And these icons are all covered on the main rule book, what they do. And they range in things from a number of points of damage to pushing the enemy back an inch to allowing me to circle and things like that.
Yeah.
And getting glory also. Some of them have a little favor. Thank you. Have a little laurel leaf icons on them, and if that happens, it means the crowd basically is cheering for me, and I get to add another favor die back into my favor pool.
Yep.
So the way you get favor back is by these actions.
Exactly. And you're building, and that's built into the fluff of the character. So if you've got a grandstander, he might not do as much damage if you pick a particular track, but he might get a lot more favor as he's kind of like grandstanding for the audience. And built into this is also, like, you might look at this and go, oh, but what I want to throw guys. I want to do other cool stuff. That's built into this damage tree as well.
Right.
Where specific models will have that ability to pick guys up and throw them or do all kinds of other horrific bodily injurious things to them.
And then, as Craig mentioned, it really, looking at that tree really tells you the abilities of the model. So I was playing Gaius, who's sort of this sort of like druidic tree guy, and he's got part plant growth partly in his body.
Well, his fluff was that he was almost decapitated in a battle, and a random druid came by and brought him to this island and healed him. But the way he healed him was to weave his flesh into a sacred tree.
So the cool part about that is he regenerates. It has some core rules around that, as well as he really can push people around. The bad thing is, apparently the crowd doesn't like him. He generates almost no glory. So favor. So he's really
favor, sir. Favor.
Interesting. So there are other characters that push people around really well and control the table and get them into damage. Other people are support characters and heal other people, or they do a lot of damage. Other people get you more favor. So you can really have a lot of, and this goes back to building your force, right? Do you want to have everybody just does a lot of damage? You want to balance it out and that kind of stuff. And a lot of that's really in those icons right there. And a very simple.
Yeah. And when you're building your cohort is what they call it. You have access to animals too, and you can include animals in it. And one of the animals is a rhinoceros. And the rhinoceros has almost all. It's got 2 different tracks. One where it can just gore you and do a lot of damage. The other one, it can actually push you around and like push you ridiculously. And it has special rules where it's pushing you further than anybody else pushes you. So his name is Acerbus or Acerbus, and I'm just trying to bring it down to see. I mean, it's just ludicrous the amount of pushing this guy can do. And every time he pushes you, you go 2 inches instead of 1. So he can literally push you across the across the arena, and then if he gets a total, he's only got 4 levels of his damage tree. At the bottom one, he impales you and does it gets 2 favor.
Nice.
And we should also mention that every icon, every number is that much damage. Every icon is whatever the icon stands for, and an additional damage.
Yeah, so every box is at least 1 point of damage. Right?
Exactly.
So that's basically combat, so it's really pretty simple. Does that all make sense, Mike?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting mechanic.
It's very simple, and if you look on their website and look at the cards are all there, you can look at them, and you'll see the trees we're talking about.
Right, yes. I see some. I was looking at some of the cards where you guys were talking about it. It's kind of cool how you can. I'm looking at right now, I have Marcus Furious right in front of me. So in the middle of this tree there, you can choose to do what seems like a pretty massive 3 damage, or you can get that, what's I think a glory. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the laurels are
favor. That's what I figured it was. Okay.
So one other way to get favor too, which is pretty cool, is if you look at the bottom of the card, you'll see the damage track, right? And it's just sets of boxes going across the bottom. And so what happens is I get my hits on Craig. He cancels out something. I look at my damage tree. Let's say I push him back an inch and do 3 damage. So I push his model back an inch, and if it touches some terrain on the table, we have those effects that happen. If not, it's done. And then Craig marks on the bottom of his card that he took 3 damage. Now, if you look on those damage boxes, you will see occasionally as you go along there, those laurel icons show up again. So as you take damage, you can actually earn glory. Favor. So favor and glory.
On purpose.
So there's other ways to get that as well. So watch for that also, which is really cool because, again, not all the characters get as much favor as they get damaged. So you can kind of build a tank that his job is to take a lot of damage and gives you more glory faster. That kind of stuff too, which is pretty neat. So I do like that mechanic a lot. I like the glory mechanic a lot, and I really think the card mechanics keep the game very simple and fluid and give you a lot of options and make the characters feel very different.
And at the same time, there's not that much to memorize.
It really isn't. So that's most of the game. There's a couple of things we should talk about. So one, we mentioned earlier that being exhausted
I did want to clarify one thing because we talked a lot about pushing and how important pushing is, especially if there's pits around. When you put for every push arrow that you get, that model goes 1 inch directly away from you. Then you get to have a 1 inch follow up that has to be towards the model you just pushed, but not directly towards him. So that gives you, as long as you end in the engagement range still, you can basically then start to kind of curve him towards whatever it is you're trying to push him towards.
Right.
So that gives you a lot more leeway. And there are some models who actually get a longer push or a longer follow up and can actually move around and maneuver and manipulate you even more. So there's all kinds of cool little minutia going on as well.
Yep. So I think I missed one little part there while I was looking at the cards. So on the track, on the damage tree, is that per you fill that out on each attack, so you can kind of follow it each time, or is that something that builds up over a series of attacks?
The damage tree is for.
The damage tree or attack tree. I forgot what it's called.
So the tree that goes from top to bottom on the left hand side of the card. That's right. When you get an attack, if the difference between the number of successes I got and the number of blocks Craig got is how many times I get to go down the tree for that attack to get results, and then
Just
it
that
resets.
attack.
And then if I can get getting like 3 or 4 successes is a big deal to get you most of the way down the track.
Yeah.
Right.
And one thing, if you get more successes than you have spots on your track, they're just kind of lost for most gladiators.
And again, your attack pool is usually 5 or 6 dice.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get, on average, you're going to be getting, 3 successes maybe, but then your opponent's got, 2 defense dice, so he's probably going to knock you out of 2, but then if you start throwing the favor dice in there, it starts making things interesting, right?
Gotcha.
And then don't forget, with a power attack, you're re-rolling misses, and now you're really throwing some numbers at.
Yeah.
So we should mention there was a couple of other nuances here. So one, being exhausted is a problem. One, because you can't activate the model again until clear turn. But 2, when you attack an exhausted model, a couple bonus things go on right off the bat. First of all, you get 1 bonus success after all the dice are calculated. And 2, you get a free push.
Yeah.
So
if the attack is successful.
Right. So what you're looking at there is actually 1 more down my damage tree choices and getting the guy to push an extra dude. That can be huge. And we should just jump ahead now and talk about the train for just a moment. Like, if you fall in a pit, there's no die rolling. You're dead.
No, you're done.
Game over. Doesn't matter how many health you have. You're done. You just fell down a pit with spikes in the bottom. Done. And the terrain also can do like fire things and stuff do like 3 damage or so. And you're looking at guys that have 10 to 15 boxes.
At
total.
most, yeah.
At
15
most.
would be a lot.
And so you're hitting for like 4 or 5. So if you can hit the guy for 5 and then push him back into a fire obstacle for another 3, you've gotten him down to like 2 or 3 wounds left, right? And one attack. So you can really, these hazards, it's all about that, really.
Yeah.
And I think, isn't there another glory bonus, Craig, if you can take a guy out with using a terrain to get additional glory?
Yes, if you push somebody into a hazard that causes them to get out of the game, then you get a favor, not a glory.
So the terrain is really a big deal. It adds a lot more fun to the game and makes the combat very tactical and strategic as you do it.
Yeah.
Now, one other thing we should mention, which is the other core part of this, is the reactions. So that's pretty much the whole combat in the game, what you just heard so far. But the reactions add a nice wrinkle to this. And again, what's cool about this is that the whole rule set fits on a double-sided little fold-out rules reference. And so it's really not that complicated, but just know how the reactions work. So if your model is ready, meaning that he has no fatigue or exhaustion indicators on him or her, then they can react, and they can react at one of 3 points. They can react to a movement. So if Craig says, and it's got to be when he declares. So Craig can say, I'm going to move this model. And as soon as he says I'm going to move, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to react to that. And basically I can then fatigue my model and move them instead.
Yep.
I can have an opportunity attack. So if Craig says, I'm going to move my model away from your model, away from base to base on your model, I can then take an opportunity attack. And what's interesting in this is in some games you get a free opportunity attack. This is not free. I'd have to take a fatigue for it.
Yep.
But
you do get +1 success.
I do get +1 success, and I'm doing it out of phase, which can be nice.
Yeah.
You can also do a counter attack, which is pretty cool. So if our models are base to base, and Craig's like, I'm going to attack you, and my model has not been fatigued yet, I can say, okay, I'm going to counter attack. So when that happens, instead of rolling defense dice against Craig's attack, he rolls his attack pool, and I roll my attack pool. And whoever gets the most successes wins the attack and takes those against his opponent, which can be real interesting because remember, most times your defense dice is like 2, and most people's attack dice is like 5 or 6. Yeah. So a counterattack is a really interesting way to really have a good probability of not only the other guy hitting you, but getting a little damage on the way back, which is nice.
Yeah, I think I love the whole concept of the counterattack because it seems far more real to me than most miniatures games.
Yeah.
Where like, I'm going to counterattack, I'm going to counterattack. That stops you from attacking. Now I get to attack you, and then you have to survive that. Instead, it's really opposed. These opposed roles really kind of keep you engaged through the whole game.
Now, the one I really like, and I think, Mike, this was the one of your thinking earlier, is this idea of the assist reaction. Craig, how does that work?
The assist reaction you get to do if anyone attacks an ally near you, you have to be within engagement range, which for most people is base to base, I believe. You have to of either the attacking model or the attacked ally. And if you do that and you're within range, you actually get to add. You take the fatigue, then you add your defense to the guy's defense who's being attacked.
Right. So you can pool up. And this is what gets really interesting. So if my one guy's base-to-base with Craig's, and I'm base-to-base with both my guys, but I got to take a clear action this turn, I clear my stuff, and now I'm all ready, but now it's Craig's turn again. I still have the advantage of outnumbering him because he might attack one guy, but I can do the assist reaction, and now all of a sudden I'm only exhausting one other dude, but he's now adding this guy's defense, so I repel Craig's attacks. I got 4 defense dice instead of just 2, and now when my turn comes around, the guy that didn't do anything now kind of whack Craig really hard. So you get that outnumbering bonus. It's kind of built into the game with this sort of thing, which is really cool.
Yeah, I really like this one too because rather than just kind of get a +1 for whatever for outnumbering, here you have to be ready, so you have to have planned ahead, and then you actually see how the model helps and assists, and it's different depending on the model. Like you've got Ban Luca who has a giant shield. If I know Ban Luca has the armor. Amelia has a big giant shield. I think she's got a defensive 3. So you could just picture her kind of throwing that shield in the way there, and all of a sudden you go from 2 defense dice to 5 defense dice. Yeah. And exactly as you said, Russ, it leaves the other guy fresh as a daisy to counterattack when it's his turn. So I really like that. It's not overly complicated. It doesn't really extend the game a great deal, but it gives you these options that make it like a cool tactical option that you have. It's really cool.
So that's pretty much the whole game. One other thing we should talk about, though, is the tactics in the clear phase. So what makes the clear phase sort of neat is I like this option, too, because it gives you a little tactical option while you're clearing your fatigue. So these are all things, if you want to do one of these things, you've got to spend one of your glory dice. So glory dice are good for or favor dice are good for two things. One, you add them to your dice pool to make it more successful on defense or offense. But two, you can spend them in the clear phase for other powerful things. So during the clear phase, I'm saying I'm going to clear my stuff, and then I can choose to either move, recover, or incite.
Actually, you can do any of those.
Yes.
You just have to constantly pay the favor dice.
You can do it more
them.
than once. Oh, cool. That's
Yes.
you just gotta pay it. So if
some of them will say that you can only do it once per model or once per turn. But unless it says that, you can you can do move over and over and over again as long as you have the favor dice to pay for it.
So, and they're really simple. So one of them is I can spend a favor to get a free move on a model. That's easy. I can
at no fatigue cost.
Right. I can spend a favor to reduce an additional fatigue level for a model. So remember, in the clear phase, I'm only able to reduce one level. So if I got a guy that was exhausted, he's now fatigued. But if I spend a glory, I can also make him completely ready, which is, as we mentioned, great for reactions.
Which is huge.
And then also I can incite, which basically means this is kind of cool. So remember, there were hazards in the game. So one of the things you can push people into is like creatures. So you can actually put a lion model, in the arena, and basically the lion will sit there, and for the most part, what you just do is push a guy into the lion, and the lion eats him, right, or attacks him.
Attacks him.
But what's
within
cool
3 inches, not even into him. Anytime you get pushed into within 3 inches of a living hazard, they activate, and your opponent gets to move them and attack you.
Right. But what's cool about one of the tactical options is you can do what's called incite. You can spend a favor and immediately move one of the living hazards. So the lion in the corner, or the rhinoceros Craig mentioned earlier, I could then say, well, I'm going to use my favor to get the lion to move over here and get between me and Craig. So he's now either got to circle around the lion or deal with the lion before he gets to my guys or whatever. Yep. So it adds a really interesting flavor to the game, and it's a great way to make these neutral things like third-party creatures all of a sudden become a really tactical option for you. It's just a matter of how much glory you spend. And so I really like this tough decision you have to make about how you're going to use your favor.
Absolutely. And there are other ways. A lot of special abilities are paid for with favor dice also.
Yep. So that's pretty much all of it. There's a few other little things to add a lot more depth to the game than you might first imagine. There's the factions all have different faction bonuses, which are really cool. I don't know if we have to go through all those, but they're pretty neat. And the other thing that gets me really excited about this game is the idea of mounts. So they've already got models out now, only a couple, but you can see them coming, of these really showcase-sized large models that are big beasts. One's like a bull, I think, or
one is a bull. One
with
is
a rider, and one's a giant scorpion.
A giant scorpion. I believe there's a horse. I believe there's a Native American warrior on a horse coming.
They look awesome, and as we mentioned earlier, there's really 3 cards, so it'd be like a player playing this thing by itself versus a small band or something, probably in most cases. But it doesn't have a lot of complexity, right, Craig? The mount rules are pretty straightforward, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Basically, what you're doing is you're going to you're going to take those cards, and most mounts are 1 card, but they might be 2 if they're like a Titan. That's just the term for a really powerful model. So it's going to cost 2 or 3 cards. They share 1 activation. So when you activate, if the guy's still mounted, they're going to activate together. But they each have a separate favor limit, so you can actually pay favor for either model, so you've got 2 for each. The first attack that you make each turn with a mounted model, both models will attack, but then you have to pay the fatigue costs to have either of them attack again. And then when an opponent is attacking you, they have to choose whether they're going after the mount or the rider. And a cool side thing is, if you're a guy that's really good at pushing, you can push a guy off his mount.
That's awesome.
And he gets knocked off his mount, and he gets all kinds of penalties for getting knocked off.
Yeah, a couple of the cool things too. I love that the mounts work. We don't have to go through all the terrain, but they got terrain rules for whether it's rubble, fire, lethal hazards. We talked about the animals already. One of my favorites, though, Craig, and we haven't tried this yet, I totally want to, is this idea of duel zones, which are these really important, almost like King of the Hill areas in the arena, and you mark them somehow. And anytime, if you're in the duel zone, all favor you earn is doubled. So anytime anything on your tree or damage tree do there. But then also, if a clear turn happens and you control the duel zone, you also get +1 favor as well. So I can see that would be a really powerful way to kind of get people to try to be in certain areas of the arena. So I love that also, kind of a King of the Hill scenario.
Right.
And speaking of scenarios, there's like 7 different scenarios right in the basic book, right?
Oh, and there's some really cool ones. There's one where you have a criminal that you have to defend, and the criminal is chained to a post, and the other guy's trying to kill the criminal, and you're trying to defend the criminal. There's one where you have a criminal who's chained to one of your guys, and so you're running around the arena, but you're chained together, and they're trying to kill the chained guy while you're trying to keep the chained guy alive. And there's sort of take and hold objective mission. There's way more than you would expect from a game that's just battling it out in the arena.
Right. So that's pretty much the whole thing. Did it make sense, Mike?
Yeah, it sounds like an exciting little game. Sounds like something we might have to pick up for our office game nights over here.
Awesome. It is really cool. So we got to give our final thoughts now, Craig.
Yes. But first, Russ, before our final thoughts.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
In the mode of a gladiator who has just defeated the last slave of the day and turned around to find a giant, enormous scorpion running at him, trying to convey how terrified he is. Could you please explain to us the D6G rating system?
I am Spartacus, but that is the scariest, most terrifying giant scorpion I've ever seen. I mean, small scorpions, I might rate the danger level of a very tiny scorpion is maybe like 6+. The chance that I would drop my weapons in terror for such a creature. However, if it was a medium-sized threatening creature, like let's say I was teetering on the edge of a spike pit, I might say that is a fear factor of 4+. That is like 1 in half of our gladiators teetering on the edge of a spike pit would in fact soil their loincloth. But if I was facing this horrific giant scorpion, is there a woman on top of that? Is she wearing an Egyptian? I don't. Wow. Anyway, if she was about to attack you with her whip, I would say that is a terrifying 2+ for the reroll for you to be almost certainly scared of such a horrifying apparition.
Excellent. Well done.
So, Craig, what were your thoughts on Arena Rex now that you've built an arena, painted a bunch of models, and played more than a few games?
I got to tell you, I did all that in 3 days, by the way, that arena. It was crazy. I am really, really enjoying this game. I think it's my new favorite, especially for a casual game where I've got some friends over and I have this beautiful arena that I just happen to have, and we can just throw down. It lends itself to fast and furious fighting. The games are over so fast, you're not really feeling bitter that your guy got pushed into a pit and died. Right. And the fact that the last man standing, you are so powerful, it's almost like you're excited when all your models died, and you're like, yeah, I got one more guy, and he is Superman. I really, really, really enjoy the tightness of the rules. I enjoy the simplicity of them, while at the same time, the complexity that comes in with the interaction and the terrain and things like that. I really enjoy the fact that they clearly put a lot of thought into scenarios, so it's not just that, fight it out, face-to-face thing that over and over again that it could have been. The models, I think, they're a little fiddly, and I wish that they were maybe a little more firm, those weapons and things that we talked about. They paint up beautifully. They, like I said, almost no flashing whatsoever. And I think they're some of my favorite models that I've painted recently. I really, really enjoyed painting them. Of course, I'm wearing glasses now when I paint, which is terrifying to me because, I got that laser eye surgery almost 10 years ago now, so I wouldn't have to wear glasses, and now I have to wear. I finally grudgingly got some glasses for painting, and this is the first time I'm not begrudging that because I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Now I can see all the cool detail. So I've really enjoyed my time with the game. Obviously. There's one thing that we should say. The game is super popular right now to the point where almost their entire web store is sold out. But I have it on good authority from Red Republic themselves that I got an email from them less than an hour before we started recording that they're expecting a complete restock over Memorial Day weekend. Yay. So probably by the time you're hearing my voice, that is no longer a concern, and you can get all kinds of cool Arena Rex goodness. I mean, I'm a giant fan of the Roman Empire, obviously, as most people already know. So I'm already inclined to love it. But I'm going to give this game a 3+ with a reroll. And if you're looking for any kind of small model count skirmish game, fun, something that can scale up model player count wise, it's definitely a +1.
Nice. That is
I think this game really knocks it out of the park.
That is a healthy rating, sir.
It is.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot of really cool, innovative mechanics in here. I really like the reaction system. I love the fatigue system. I think that's brilliant. I love the favor system. I like the cards and the damage tracks. I like it all. I really like how they made terrain such an integral part. I love how they handled sort of the neutral creatures in a way that they're not like there's no AI to worry about. It's just who's ever willing to spend the most glory can take control of these guys.
Oh man, you got the word right once. Then you went right back to
awesomeness.
Glory.
I want to call them laurels actually for some reason. But anyway, I really like it a lot.
That is the symbol.
The only negative I think I can see, because I think they nailed this whole genre. And I'd love to see chariots now, by the way, guys. Chariots is that I think the only trick they missed here is the miniature. They look awesome. They paint up great. I'm going to buy some and have my own models to get in there. And as you mentioned earlier, Craig, the range is small enough where, if you're a guy who just likes to love and paint and collect models and wish people come over and play the game with you, this is easily a low enough model pack game where you could have that collection, put them on your shelf in your in your man cave, and then some friends come over and you can say, hey, pick a few guys from these cards here, let's duke it out,
Yep.
It's a perfect game for that, although I want to collect my own stuff. I'm only going to ding them a little bit on I think, ease of assembly and just sort of like, survivability or fragileness of these models. I feel like it's sort of and I'm sure over time they will improve that. So I'm going to give them a 3+, but I'm not going to give them the reroll just due to the model fiddliness.
Okay.
But I really like this a lot. I can't wait to play it some more, and I think they really nailed a lot of deep strategy in a very fast playing fun game.
Excellent.
So Mike, I know you haven't played it, but after hearing us talk about this for the better part of an hour here, what would you say? What would you rate your desire to play? What sounds good to you?
So it definitely sounds like a really interesting system. I definitely want to try it. That's for certain. I like the mechanics. I like I love any kind of skirmish game that has a reaction system. So it to me, it makes it kind of realistic and fun, and it makes you second guess all your choices when you're going to go after somebody and make a move, because you can set up traps and do all kinds of stuff. Makes tactics and strategy get really deep. The fatigue system is cool. I like the idea, of course, that it's a small play area. You could just get a little Playmobil arena thing and kind of paint it up, throw in some traps, and it's a nice piece. You could even display your models on such a thing.
Right.
So yeah. So you could even turn it into, like, you put a lid on it, maybe magnetize the bottom and carry it around if you were.
I like where you're going with this, Mike. That sounds pretty brilliant.
Yes. I'm always looking for interesting ways to make games more portable. So. But yeah, again, I have to agree with you guys. I am very much not a fan of resin models. That's the one catch with all this, is I'm always apprehensive about buying any models in resin unless they're like big chunky things.
Yeah.
But I've had bad experiences in the past, and I always tend to break stuff and drop things. I'm very clumsy, so I don't need, as a playing piece. I appreciate that the resin captures more detail, but as a playing piece, I prefer plastic or metal or something along those lines. But if the game is interesting enough, it's always willing to draw me in. So I'm going to go ahead and also give it a 3+.
Nice.
I think is about the right rating. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, Mike, if you do get to try it out, please tweet us or email us and let us know what you thought of it when you finally get it to the table.
I shall.
So, Mike, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy post-Kickstarter schedule here.
Yeah, and congratulations on that, and thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you, my pleasure, guys. It's been really
appreciate
fun.
it. Now, if folks want to find out more about Blood and Plunder or other things you might be up to, where should they go on the internet?
Well, you could always go to firelockgames.com. You could reach us through there. If you're on Facebook, facebook.com/firelockgames. That's where we do most of our talking with people. There's also a fan group, Blood and Plunder, Plundering Across the Spanish Main or something like that. But it's easy to find. But we're active on all those places, and those would probably be the best places to go.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Mike. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. We hope we get you back on here sometime in the future.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, guys. It's been fun. Appreciate you having me.
This Jibber Notice is brought to you by, once again, all those lads and lassies that have joined us at Patreon. So go over to Patreon, check out the video. You've heard it a million times, even just this episode, at least 1.2 million times you've heard it. Check it out, and if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, if you like what we can bring you, kick a couple bucks into the tip jar on a fairly regular basis, and you can get all those lost chapters, because, you know, that business model, blah, 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 3 hours for free, half hour, but anyway. Today, in particular, I would like to thank Adam Harder, Joel, Chris Reyes, Peter, and Chris Young. Thanks, guys, for joining us in Patreon and helping us keep the lights on. Did you ever notice how crazy sometimes things can be when you get creative? My wife, as most longtime listeners will know, is a huge fan of Howard Stern. And Howard Stern has this sidekick comedy writer guy named Benji. Benji is a very funny guy, I guess. But apparently sometimes he has this problem where he wraps himself up in a comic bit so tightly that he can't get out of it, and he just starts acting crazy and sort of spiraling into ridiculous behavior that he can't get out of. And Howard Stern calls this a shtick coma, where he's just kind of lost in the shtick and he can't get out, and he just acts crazier and crazier and crazier, and either gets himself kicked out of wherever, or, you know, disciplined in some way. And for a very long time now, I have empathized with the concept of the shtick coma, because I feel like very occasionally I will have a project coma. And it might be an army. It might be a whole table of terrain. It might be some other project that all of a sudden gets into my head, and I cannot stop until it's done. And I do all kinds of ridiculous things from the moment it gets into my head to the moment it's over. I'm just acting in an almost irrational way. And that's what happened with the Playmobil arena for Arena Rex that I've talked about in this episode a couple times. So there's this Playmobil arena, and you can find it on eBay in a couple different places, but it usually costs somewhere between $100 and $300. And I paid a lot for it. I paid $170 for it, but then ended up having two of them, except for the front gate. And then I found a front gate for $10. So for all close to $200, I have two full arenas, which is awesome, but who needs two full arenas? So what I've done is I've taken the seating segments. I've doubled up the seating segments, so my arena has 4 seating segments instead of 2. The regular one has 2 seating segments, and then the rest of the wall, the arena wall, is just wall. Well, all kinds of cool detail and 3-dimensional and everything, but wall instead of seating. So I now have sort of a practice arena that's not finished or anything, but it has the big front gate and everything, and then it's got just the wall of the arena, whereas my official arena has 4 seating sections, which coincidentally are great places for 4 players to store their favor dice when they're playing Arena Rex. So you have your own little area for your favor dice to be. And I also... so I got into a project coma with this, obviously, and it's ridiculous. And one of the main problems is I spend money like water. I normally keep very tight track of my finances. I know how much money. I'm very good at saving money, and then I go into one of these comas. And then I wake up and I have no money left. And so I went online. I found this place. I think it's plasticsoldiers.com or something like that. And they have like thousands upon thousands of products. It's Plastic Soldiers. And every time period you can imagine, including Roman. And so I got a whole bunch of Roman stuff. Very disappointed in most of it. I won't lie. Most of it is very toy quality. I got pillars with Roman busts on them. I thought that was going to be awesome. The pillars are very thin, slightly thicker than a pencil, probably like a magic marker thickness, and not finished on the back. On the back, they're hollow basically, and there's a big giant hole, like oval hole in the back. So that was very disappointing. I got some braziers. You see, if you've checked out Twitter, you've seen the pictures of the braziers with the flames in them. It's supposed to come with 3. One of them was all broken, and the plastic is so cheap you can't really fix it. So that was annoying. But it was cool because I also got some statues and I painted those up to make it look like statues. And another thing I got were these awesome Roman banners, these like standards, and it coincidentally came with 4, and each of the 4 designs, it came with 12, but each of the 4 designs, or 15, I don't know, each of the 4 designs sort of clearly can coincide with one of the ludi of Arena Rec. So that was awesome. So I'm going to paint those up. I'm going to drill little holes in the back, and so you can put your standard in your place for your dice. So that was great. But the problem is it's all plastic, right? It's all toy plastic on top of that. Now it's good quality. It's Playmobil. It's good quality, but it's plastic. So that needs to be fixed. Also, there's no pits. So I need a base with pits in it, exactly like the one that Red Republic Games had at Adepticon. So I have had, before I went to Peru, I got the Playmobil Arena, and then I built it and put it together, and it was on my nice round table in the pub, and it was just sort of there. And then in 3 days, all of a sudden, I was like, this has to happen. I went to the local home repair place. I got 2-inch insulation foam. I couldn't get it in my car. I tried to slice it in a way that worked, but it didn't work. It broke into 3 pieces. I didn't care. I threw it in the car. I wanted to have sand that was like pockmarked like feet. So I got stucco, and I figured I would put a layer of stucco inside, and then I would find something to dimple the sand like foot marks. Like if you go on the Arena Rex website and you see the bases, they've done that, and it's actually green stuff or putty. But I couldn't obviously fill the entire thing with green stuff, so I was going to use stucco. Then I would cover it with sand. That was my original thought. Then I figured I needed to get textured paint. If I got the right textured paint, I wouldn't even need to really paint the arena. I was just going to spray it. So I went and I was like, maybe 2 cans of spray texture paint. And I got the, I think it's like a desert bisque or beach bisque. It's a very sand colored paint. And I just went insane. And I started working on in all my free time, which of course I don't have a lot of. I painted and painted and painted and built, and I got liquid nails. And then of course I couldn't find my caulking gun, so I was doing it by hand and ripping the sleeve open and using putty knives to put the liquid nails and glue all of the foam back together so I could get, it wasn't going to be 4x4 because that's too big, so it was going to be 3x3, except it's not 3x3 now, so I just kind of like eyeballed it. But I mean, I cut stuff, I don't even look at it, and the pits I just like hack at. And it's insane. And I'm not using cutting boards. I'm like literally cutting like right into the table. And that's when I realize I'm in a coma, because I stop for a moment going, wow, I'm cutting right directly into my antique pub table. And then I think, but it's wood. And then, it's all scarred up anyway because it's an antique. And I just keep going. That's how insane it gets. I have a big piece of plywood out back resting on a stump, so it looks kind of like a table. And that's where I spray everything. And money make no object. So I go through the 2 cans of spray paint. It's not enough. I go get 2 more. It's not enough. And I have no idea how much I'm spending. I know my bank account could probably handle it. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody said, yeah, I'm sorry, you don't have any more money left. When all is said and done and the dust settles, I think it looks really, really cool. It's got pits. It's got the braziers are now all painted up. It's all textured like sand and then dry brushed to look like it's like that old sandstone. The sand itself, I've managed to pockmark. I got these little pipes that end in sort of a rounded knob, and I glued a bunch of them in a random pattern onto a wooden block, and then I just started patting at the stucco, and unfortunately it worked great for a little bit, and then it just started to sort of pull away in little. It looked like I was doing a cake decoration, because once the little knobs started to get covered with the stucco, it just started like it would pull away like little like cupcake tops, and that was annoying. I kind of like smoothed that out, and I just like steamroll. In 3 days, I went from just a bunch of raw materials to this final. It's got statues. The pillars are all painted. Everything's all painted. The sand's a different color. The pits look nice. They have wooden covers on them so that you don't have to use them if you don't want to use them. I'm super, super excited. This time around, the cost was relatively low as far as the damage goes. I was able to clean it all up, and it is an old, scarred up old pub table, so you can't really tell that I went all nutty on it. There are cool ideas that I have that I can kick it up another notch, but when all is said and done, I now have this awesome arena that I can take apart and travel around with. I mean, the base is always going to be roughly 3x3, and I'm not going to break that down, but that'll fit in a trunk of a car. So I have this, and it's really cool, and it really makes the game. So I highly recommend, if you're going to go into Arena Rex, you can do it, or you can get somebody else to do it. Even without any paint job and any work, the Playmobil Arena is cool. But with just a crap ton of textured spray paint, and then a quick, I used camouflage at Walmart. They have camouflage spray paint, so it's a super matte, and they have a sand, so I did that. And then I dry brushed it with a lighter color that I just got from craft paint from like Michael's crafting store, and it's great. I really, really love it, and I'm super excited that it took just 3 days. But at the same time, it's kind of scary. And I emerge from the coma, and I have this really cool thing, and I'm just standing in the middle of a mess. It was crazy. There was just foam everywhere, and little things of dust everywhere, and bits and pieces of broken stuff that I tried out, and then it broke, and I threw it away. But yeah, that was my hobbying excitement for this last week, was that 3-day ridiculous push where I got nothing else done. I didn't get any writing done or anything else, but I got that done. So it was exciting, and it was fun. And on Twitter, you'll be able to look at it. And Russ tweeted a bunch of pictures. Because I finished the Arena Rex models, I'm going to try to put those in there and get a couple of those tweeted out before I disappear for Memorial Day weekend. But thank you guys for listening and sticking through to the end. And it really means a lot. So yeah, Project Comas. You got them? I got them. Not fun, but it's awesome when you wake up. That's about all I've got to say about that. So thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
While not historically accurate, Assassin's Creed Black Flag did feature quite a bit of inspirational pirate stuff, not the least of which was the amazing music, including a whole selection of various sea shanties such as this one. Be sure to check out iTunes for all the other great Black Flag soundtrack options.
Oh, now you're ready to sail for the Horn. Way, hey, roll and go. Our boots and our clothes, boys, are all in the horn. To be rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a port, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored. To be rollicking randy dandy, oh. Hey. Soon we'll be warping her out through the locks. Way, hey, roll and go. Where the pretty young girls all come down in their frocks. To be rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a port, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored to be rollicking randy dandy, oh. Come breast the bars, bullies, heave her away. Way, hey, roll and go. Soon we'll be rolling her down through the bay to be rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a port, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored to be rollicking randy dandy, oh.